Good. Senator Mungatana.
Asante Bwana Spika. Waziri, nashukuru kazi zako zinaonekana. Na kwa Wakenya walio na nia njema tunashukuru what you're doing, kazi ambayo unafanya. Lakini nina malalamishi kidogo ambayo ndio swali nataka kukuuliza. Waziri, umeanzisha siku ambazo unatembea kwa county fulani na ukaitisha watu wa kuandikwa kazi ughaibuni. Lakini hizi county ambazo umetembea na unafanya hii kazi ni county ambazo ziko town, ziko kwa mijiji vikubwa, county ambazo ziko mbali, ambao wananchi wanachukua muda mrefu kufika kwa vijiji, kama county yangu ya Tana River na zingine. Kwa nini hujafanya mpangilio wa kutangaza siku ya kutembea kwenda huko kuandikisha vijana na watu ambao wanataka kufanya kazi?
Senator Mungatana, just
yes, my lord.
What is your point of order, Senator Mazai?
Bwana Spika, kwa heshima na taadhima, umeweza kumnyamazisha ndugu yangu Onyoka sasa hivi kwa sababu alikuwa anaeleza kabla hajauliza swali. Lakini naona mkondo huo unafuatwa na ndugu yangu Mungatana. Na wewe hawezi pia na wewe hausimamishi kama vile ulivyomsimamisha ndugu yetu Onyoka. Nataka kujua ni kwa sababu gani pengine uamuzi kama huo.
So is your point of order direct to the chair or to Senator Mungatana?
Senator Mungatana.
Senator Mungatana. Then in that case, Senator Mungatana is not out of order. Proceed, Honorable Senator. And Minority Leader, approach the chair, please. Minority Leader. Minority Leader. Proceed and conclude.
Waziri,
ask your question, Senator Mungatana.
Yes, Waziri, nilikuwa nauliza ni siku gani utapanga kutembelea na wizara yako sehemu kama Tana River, sehemu ambazo ziko mbali na majiji makubwa, ili uandikishe watu ambao nao wanataka kupata nafasi za kufanya kazi ughaibuni. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Wakoli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question goes to our good minister. Your team was in Bungoma some times back in a public institution to recruit young people to go to the diaspora to work. I have got their calls. They are traveling to Nairobi to facilitate and get is it NHIF and SHA facilities to enable them to travel to those areas they want to go. What is your agreement? What is your contract between either SHIF, NHIF, or any other insurance towards these young people going out of the country to work? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Enoch, on board.
Mr. Speaker, I want to seek clarification from the CS when he's stood to respond to the questions. He profiled Kenyans as big-headed activists, people who take maandamano abroad, people generally have bad manners. Is that the appreciation of the ministry of the caliber of Kenyans that we send outside the country for jobs abroad? The Speaker, this House of Record, it will be important for the minister to come clean on whether that is what the ministry appreciates, the Kenyans that we send abroad to work there. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheriot Aaron, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question to the Cabinet Secretary. Whether the ministry has finally installed the LIIMS system that the predecessor in that ministry promised this House the last time they appeared on this issue. Because, Mr. Speaker, that was a finding of this House in a delegation that yourself, you led. I think we were with the minority leader, his deputy was there, and a number of senators when we met Kenyans living and working in the UAE. And that's one of the requests that they made to this House. And at the subsequent meeting and presentation by the Minister for Labor, they had made a commitment as a ministry that by the time they'll be coming to this House, they will have installed that system that will answer many of the questions that senators are asking with regards to the enlisted companies, whether it's possible to trace Kenyans easily. That whole problem was supposed to be sorted by this system. So my question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is if that system has been installed, and if not, what is causing the delay and how long until we get it? Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I just want to request that because we have the chairperson of the Labour Committee with us here today, Mr. Speaker, this House spent a lot of money towards the end of the last session of Parliament doing an investigation on all these issues that are being raised. Unfortunately, that report never saw the light of day because it came at the end of the term of Parliament. If we can request that the Labour Committee invites these ministry officials for a session and a consideration of that report. They don't need to travel, they don't need to do anything, they just need to move this House to adopt those recommendations as they speak to many of the issues that I see members of this House raising this morning. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Joe Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is very short. Mr. Speaker, you realize that the jobs in Saudi have more challenges than jobs in Western countries. So my question to the CS is, what arrangements has he put in place to see to it that when jobs arise from Western countries, which are more lucrative, that they are evenly distributed across the country? And I ask this because there are rumors out there that jobs in Europe and Canada are reserved for some areas in this country. So exactly what does the minister do to see to it that any available job opportunity abroad is distributed evenly across the country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this matter of immigrant workers to Middle East has been an issue that has come to these two houses so many times. And every time we get answers, the answers are not satisfactory. The Honorable Cabinet Secretary has this morning misled this House that there is no death that has been reported in the recent time. I want to put to the Cabinet Secretary that a young lady, 28-year-old lady, by the name Elizabeth Chausi from Shamahoho Ward, the passport number AK1179924, was killed, murdered in Saudi Arabia. And it was widely reported in the media. So is the Cabinet Secretary aware to the extent that his ministry is not even listening to the media? Where is the embassy? Why has the embassy not been informed about this death? And Mr. Speaker, this is a very sad case because this particular lady comes from a very humble family. He has been raised by an old grandmother called Agnes Maiti, and he left to go and look for greener pastures in Saudi Arabia, only to come back dead and the ministry is doing nothing. The family requires 1.3 million shillings to bring the body back home. This case happened last week. The cabinet secretary cannot have the audacity to come to this house and lie to this house that there has never been any death reported. When in Vihiga County alone, this year, I have so many cases of people who have died in the Middle East, in the similar cases. Mr. Speaker, I want you to caution the cabinet secretary to withdraw that statement that no Kenyan has been reported dead in Saudi Arabia. I have all the details. Mr.
Honorable Sosi, the chair is speaking. The chair is speaking. Proceed to ask your question and let the Honorable CS.
So I want to ask the cabinet secretary whether he is aware that one, Elizabeth Shausi of passport number AK1179924, who hails from Shamakoko ward in Vihiga County, whether he's alive or dead. And what the ministry is doing to bring back the body home, and whether the Kenyan embassy in Saudi Arabia is awake or asleep on this matter, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wakili Sige.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I notice, Honorable Speaker, that in the forwarding letter on this response, I wanted to correct this because the Honorable Senator Beatrice Muma, who is a member of your panel, is not Beatrice Muna. So may the CS correct that spelling to make reference to specific the names. Yes, but the letter refers to Catherine Muna, which is actually a misrepresentation. My question, Mr. Speaker, to the Honorable CS is with regards to his response on the fact that he has, in his ministry, posted labor attaches to a number of our missions abroad. I would like to get specifics or a confirmation that these labor attaches are in all our missions, and if not, what are those missions without our labor attaches, and how do they deal with issues like what Senator Osotsi has raised in instances where we do not have labor attaches in our missions abroad? Thank you.
Senator Mazayo.
Asante mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, swala langu kwa waziri ni kama ifuatavyo. Katika mwaka huu mwanzo kuna mama anaitwa Maureen Nyazua. Maureen ya Nyazua. Yeye aliondoka Kenya kama nasi kuenda kufanya kazi huko Saudi Arabia. Na hatimaye kazi hiyo ikatokea kwamba iko ndani ya nyumba, kwamba kulikuwa lazima afanye hiyo kazi yake ya unasi ndani ya nyumba. Bwana Spika, hivi sasa huyo mama ni mgonjwa sana. Ana pressure, ana magonjwa ambayo tofauti ambayo inahitajika kwamba anatakana aidha apelekwe hospitali na hatimaye akiwa amepoa aweze kupata njia yake ya kurudi nyumbani. Bwana Spika, mama huyo anaketi Mbaraka Chimbe huko eneo la Kilifi County. Kuna agency inaitwa Lahaza agency ambayo hivi sasa ndio ilimchukua huko, na sasa wakati akiwa na haja ya kuwafikia wale agents wake hawezi kuwafikia, na imefika wakati sasa ni mgonjwa sana na kuna hatari ya kwamba anaweza kufariki. Bwana Spika, nataka kuuliza, je, waziri unaelewa kwamba huyu mama yuko huko na hali yake iko mahututi na hivi sasa anatakana kurudi nyumbani? Hiyo ni ya kwanza. Ya pili, je, hii inaitwa Lahaza ama hahaza agency inaruhusiwa na wizara yako ili kuweza kupeleka Wakenya maeneo ya Saudi Arabia kufanya kazi. Niko na jina la agent yule ambaye alihusikana na kumchukua huyu mama kutoka Kilifi mpaka Saudia, anaitwa Bwana Muhammad. Namba yake ya simu ni 0759297229. Nataka kuuliza, je, huyu mtu anaruhusiwa kufanya hiyo kazi ya kupeleka watu Uarabuni? Na ikiwa ni hivyo, hivi sasa ni njia gani wewe kama wizara yako, huyu mama akiwa saa hizi hawezi hata kufanya kazi yoyote ya nyumba ama kufanya kazi yake ya unasi, unachukua njia gani kuweza kumleta huyu mama nyumbani na hatimaye kuona ya kwamba hii kampuni ambayo ilimpeleka, umechukua hatua gani kuona ya kwamba imeajibika kuweza kumleta huyu mama nyumbani? Asante Bwana Speaker.
Honorable CS, you may respond to that first set of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Nitaanza na swali la Senator Miraji kuhusu ile hazina ya fedha. Tayari tumepanga mikakati ya kuwa na hazina ya fedha ambayo itaondoa changamoto nyingi, lakini hivi sasa lazima hiyo hazina ya fedha iwe imeorodheshwa kwenye sheria. Kwa hivyo tuko na bill ya labor migration bill ambayo inaendelea tayari niliweka sahihi juzi, ndio iweze kuletwa kwa bunge, iweze kuchangia, ndio hiyo iwe katika hali ya sheria. Kwa hivyo tunatarajia kwamba itakuja mpaka hapa na itaweza kusonga nayo. The second question from Honorable Senator Mungatana, it's a brilliant question. Thank you very much. Because, sorry, uliongea na Kiswahili. Kwa sababu Nairobi sio Kenya, na Mombasa sio Kenya, na miji mikuu sio Kenya. Lazima tuwe na mikakati ya kuweza kuwafikia watu. Nilikuwa nimeanza safari ya kwenda katika kila county, kuanzia katika kila county kuongelesha ndugu dada zetu, lakini tukakuwa na upungufu wa hali ya fedha. Unajua kuna upungufu wa zile budget yetu ilikatwa kuweza safari hizo, na pia niliona kulikuwa na changamoto kidogo wa zile safari nilizoenda. Nikaona kuna agencies na mikakati ambayo kweli ilikuwa lazima kwanza nilainishe, ndio tusiende tujichimbie shimo. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni mambo ambayo naendelea kumaliza, na hivi karibuni nitarejea. Nitaka kufanya kazi sana na waheshimiwa wa Senate na pia wa National Assembly, ndio tuweze kushirikiana. Wakati naja mahali na waeleza, mnapanga watu wenyu, pengine hata mnawasaidia na nauli kidogo, tunaenda mahali ambapo ni karibu. Nikienda county fulani moja, nisiende tu mahali pamoja, niende recruitment mahali pawili ama patatu hivi. Na kuna mpango ambao naangalia ambapo nitaweza kuwauliza nyinyi wenyewe mkiwa kule kijijini, muweze kuwatambua wale ambao wamehitimu, ndio tuanzie hapo. Isikuwe ni kazi ya sisi kutoka kuja hapo. Nyinyi waheshimiwa ambao mmepigiwa kura na wananchi, mnawakilisha, muweze kusaidia. Senator Wakoli, you talked about the team in Bungoma. I'm not conversant on that process. What I know is that before people go overseas, they have to undertake medical care. They have to undergo medical tests. And the tests can be quite expensive. It means x-rays for your chest, looking for TB, blood, infections, and such. And so I believe that the move for people to register for SHA is so that when they go for medicals, part of that medical fee is covered already by their registration. But I'll follow up to find out on that aspect of why it is happening that way. Senator Kio, I'd like to just clarify that I never said that Kenyans are big-headed activists. I was reporting what they told me. And I was just saying that we need to, the spirit of Kenyans that makes us great. We are people who are very well educated, very liberal, very democratic. We know our rights and we fight for our rights. And that's a very good spirit, and that's what makes us a very great nation. And so we need to bridge between our rights and our information and our ability to speak our voices with how to do it. The issue is not what to do, but it's how you're doing it. When you go to a foreign country that may not have the democratic rights like we do in our country, you need to understand how to navigate the aspects of those countries. Even countries with democratic rights, everybody frowns upon a foreigner coming to shout in their country. If we had foreigners in our country, employed here, starting to demonstrate in the streets of Nairobi, you'll see Kenyans saying, warudi kwao. Kwani hao ni nani wanakuja kutupigia kelele hapa kwetu? So it's a matter of just teaching Kenyans how to seek redress without appearing to be a thorn in the flesh in these countries, because when you travel to another country, you are a visitor. The overlying principle is, if you are dissatisfied with where you are and you no longer want to be there, you are allowed to leave. Nobody will stop you from leaving that country and coming back home. Come back to your country. But if you wish to stay there, then you may have to adhere. I've lived overseas. I lived in Australia, I lived in the US, I lived in Dubai and worked in Dubai. There are principles that you have to adhere in Dubai. If they tell you you don't go shaking hands or hugging women, you don't do it, because that's their principles. If you feel like your rights for hugging is being embedded upon, come back home. Come and hug the ones in Kenya. Don't cross the border, because there are religious factors and other factors in different countries. Majority Leader, and that is why, we are doing civic education, so that we teach our young people how to adapt to these cultures. And cultural knowledge is very important. Even in countries in Japan, you go there, there's some ways you can cross your legs and insult a whole village. So we are teaching them how to really behave in some countries. Majority Leader, you asked about the system. What we did is that instead, just before I go to the ministry, a decision was made that instead of a new system, we are upgrading the National Employment Integration System under NEA with a grant of 400 million shillings from ILO. And when this is upgraded, it will have all this information that is there. Currently, as we speak, the NEA website has all the information about the valid recruitment agencies. So mtu akisema anataka kupeleka ngambo, you just go and check, are they valid? Is this person in that agency and their name? And are they following the laws and the principles? And most of the people who are taking overseas have Form 4 university degrees. They can do due diligence, and we are encouraging them to do so. Thank you also, Senator Nyotu, for your question about the issue about Saudi. It is very good to clarify here that in Saudi Arabia, we've got Kenyans who are doctors, Kenyans who are nurses, Kenyans who are teachers, Kenyans who are drivers, Kenyans who are ICT experts, Kenyans in the hospitality industry, Kenyans who are working in a variety of jobs, including in the government of Saudi Arabia. The issue we've had, you hear of Saudi Arabia, are issues of people working in homes. So we cannot say that it is Kenyans working there. It's a segment where we've had this small issue of people working in homes. So that is why we have had the new BLA, the working of the BLA. The Saudi Arabians have appointed somebody to deal with those issues, to respond to some of those challenges in homes, so that people are well protected. The issue of Europe and Canada and jobs is the fact that jobs are, people are taken to jobs according to available positions, the demands that are given. The difference is this: if you're going to work in Saudi Arabia, you're going to work in Qatar, you're going to work in these countries, the amount of money you need to pay your agency here is little, because a lot of the monies are given over there for your ticket and others. Even though they're not given in the UAE, it's low cost, it's just here. If you're going to go to Australia, for example, to work, the average money that you need to come up front with, even for the visa and everything, you're paying about 700 to 1 million shillings. So the jobs are there. But the amount of money you need to go to Germany, Poland, 700,000 shillings. That's where you see a lot of Kenyans who can afford are going to countries, but the positions are there and they're open to all Kenyans. They're not set for any community at all. Senator Osotsi, good senator from Vihiga, you gave an explanation of a person who has passed away. I'm not aware of that. I will investigate, and I'll find out the cause of death of this person. You say they were murdered. We'll find out. Murder is a police case. It means that somebody actually committed the murder and they need to be arrested. Investigations were done. Is it murder? Where were they murdered? Where were they at the time of murdering? Were they still working and all that? So I will find out. But it's also good to designate roles here, Mr. Speaker. I'm the Minister for Labor. I deal with Kenyans when they're here before they go overseas, and I monitor how they're doing. But the work of repatriating Kenyans when they're overseas is the State Department of Diaspora under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that's where the embassies come in. So we work as a team to collaborate. So some of these issues you're asking about, the ambassadors would rather be asked to the minister in charge of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Senator Osusi, you know you cannot pose a point of order against the CS. Proceed, Honorable CS.
Senator Wakili Sigei, thank you for that, pointing out about that error in spelling, and we will correct it. And we have posted labor attaches to Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, to Geneva in Switzerland, to Doha in Qatar, to Dubai in the UAE, and to Berlin in Germany. Those are the main sources where we are getting more demands for jobs. And I'm changing the labor attaches, and we are posting new ones within the next 2 to 3 months, but to require a budget of about 300 million for us to be for us to be able to send them. And so we hope that if we had more money, we'd have more labor attaches in many countries that we'll be able to. So, but the consular services in those countries, we work with them, and so the teams on the ground with the embassies are able to undertake that work. Mheshimiwa Mazoya, umeuliza kuhusu dada yetu Maureen Yajua ambaye ni mgonjwa. Ningependa kufafanua, namwambia augue pole. Yajua anaitwa Maureen Najua ambaye anaumwa, namwambia augue pole, namtakia mema. Ningependa
Senator Mazayo, what is your issue?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Stuart Mazayo.
Honorable
Mazayo.
CS, the senator for Kilifi is Stuart Mazayo, not otherwise.
And the lady I've spoken about, she's called Maureen Nyazua Ya.
Thank you, Senator Mazayo. I think I said Senator Mazayo. And then I said the lady is called Maureen Najua. That's why I made a mistake, Yajua. But I think Mazayo, I know you for many years. Everybody knows you. So sorry if I misspelled your name, but I think I pronounced your name properly, if I try to recall. So I think they mixed up because I said both names following each other. About Maureen Najua, ambao ulisema ameugua katika nchi nyingine. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ile maktaba, the agreement that we have, na mtu yoyote anapoenda ng'ambo, hizi nchi zinampa full medical care. Kama Saudi, uko na full medical care. Ukiugua, tumeona Wakenya wameugua sana huko, wamepelekwa hata the Royal Hospital, wanatibiwa ICU mpaka wanapona. It's fully covered. Na unatibiwa, unapona. Na katika pia kandarasi wanajaza, iko na return ticket. Sio lazima arudishwe na yule ambaye alimpeleka. Kuna return ticket as part of the agreement. Ya maana ukimaliza kazi ikiisha, au kukosa kazi, maybe umeugua, una return ticket imepeanwa na yule amekuajiri uweze kurejea nyumbani. Lakini ikiwa bado unamfanyia huyo kazi, sijui vile Maureen hali yake nitachunguza, lakini kwa ujumla simtaji, anasema kwa ujumla unakuta ya kwamba umepewa kazi na mtu fulani umfanyie kazi. Wewe unatoroka hiyo kazi, unaenda kufanya mambo mengine.
Honorable CS, just go straight to Senator Mazayo's question. And if you're not aware of the circumstances of Maureen Nyazua, you may plead to bring up more comprehensive response, because that is the general principles under which a minister operates. But in regards to Maureen, if you're not aware of the details, you may seek time so that you give us more detailed and comprehensive response regarding this particular girl that Honorable Senator has talked about.
Well guided, Mr. Speaker. I will find out about the case of Maureen Najua and about Mr. Mohammed, and just to clarify that if she was still working for the same employer, then she should be getting medical care, and we'll investigate why that is not so, and I'll be able to give a comprehensive answer to this House. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Now we have a second question directed to the same ministry by the Honorable Senator James Murango. Yes.
I'm standing in for him.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm standing in for Senator James Murango of Kirinyaga County, and these are the questions that he has for the CS Labor and Social Protection. One, what has led to the increase in the number of street children in major towns across Kirinyaga County, including Gurufani, Kutus, Kagio, Sagana, and Kiruguya? B, could the Cabinet Secretary provide details on government programs for the rescue and rehabilitation of street children in Kirinyaga County and provide a status update on efforts to reintegrate these children with their families? And C, Mr. Speaker, what is the government doing to support street families to access formal education, obtain national identity cards, and secure job opportunities within and outside the country? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS, you may respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and thanks for this question from Senator James Murango. The increase in number of street families in major towns across Kirinyaga County and several other counties has been attributed to several factors. One of them is the influx of destitute children and families from neighboring countries attracted by engagement by the business community, especially those in rice business. In other words, what I'm saying is that some of these people are not Kenyans who are in those areas. They come and they undertake menial jobs like pulling carts and carrying other market wares from one place to the other for some meager pay. Others are Kenyans that have been attracted to those areas, not necessarily just from the street. The second question, Mr. Speaker, sir, on programs for rescue and rehabilitation. Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund developed a national policy on rehabilitation of street families. The policy provides guidelines on implementation of programs which include prevention of more persons going to the streets, rescue, rehabilitation, reintegration, and resocialization. This will ensure that the programs are effectively implemented in all urban areas, including Kirinyaga County. The Trust Fund is establishing Street Families Rehabilitation County chapters, which are structures that coordinate rehabilitation of street families at the county and other lower levels. Kirinyaga County level is scheduled to be operationalized in the current financial year. In the third week, Mr. Speaker, of February 2025, the Trust implementing partners operating in Kirinyaga and Muranga counties in conjunction with the Director of Children's Services in Mwea Sub-County rescued a total of 14 boys working on the streets of Ngurubaini who have now been placed in rehabilitation center in Muranga for further assessment and relevant placement. The business community is normally involved in such rescue missions as a way of sensitizing them on the plight of street families. Upon rehabilitation, the beneficiaries are integrated back to society after provision of economic empowerment strategies to ensure they sustainably settle within their community. They also link to relevant services and integration. And I've listed there some of the things that we are doing for Kirinyaga County. The last question, Mr. Speaker, is what is the government doing to support street families to access formal education and obtain IDs and secure jobs outside the country? The government, through the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection, has developed the following strategies to assist and to ensure welfare of street families is taken care of. One is a rescue aspect. process of identifying, assessing, and helping persons out of street situations for eventual rehabilitation, reintegration, and resocialization for better living. 2 is rehabilitation. This is where you able to restore their human dignity, privileges, so that they also understand, and through counseling, how they can actually fit back into society. Upon rescue, beneficiaries undergo an assessment to determine suitable placement within the education system so that kids can go back to school. The ones who are over 18 are also given their ID cards, and internship opportunities are provided on those ones, for those ones who have been able to be trained. Any person with a skill, because the idea is if you're a street child, you're over 18, and you've gone through training, skill development in a TVET, or we take you through rehabilitation, you are open to compete for any overseas job that is there. And we'll try as much as possible to ensure that street children get a livelihood by having a program whereby they are considered first in terms of overseas jobs. By linking rehabilitated beneficiaries to potential workers, we are trying to ensure that they also have a way of being able to continue. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is to say that we, as the ministry, we continue to lobby Parliament, particularly through the Social Protection Committees, to allocate sufficient funds to enable the ministry to implement vital and effective programs aimed at securing the welfare of street children. And to finalize and say, Mr. Speaker, I've had meetings with my people, and we are reworking the rehabilitation and identification of street families. Some of the street families we are seeing in our country are foreigners from foreign nations that have come to Kenya, because Kenya is an economic giant in the region. And so we are working on that so that we can be able to get them sent back home to their countries, and also get the ones that are here taken back to the countryside where they come from, and also taken to school as part of the rehabilitation. I submit, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Yes, Honorable Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've listened to the response by the CS, but I may want a little more information, especially on question number 1. Because, Mr. Speaker, the CS has submitted that the increase in the number of street families in Kirinyaga County, and indeed in the whole country, is because of most of them are foreigners. Could the CS provide us the details? I mean, profile the locals against foreigners, so that we can know how many street families are locals and how many are foreigners. And Mr. Speaker, because every foreigner that comes to this country, of course, is not supposed to be here illegally. What is the responsibility of the ministry on street families from foreigners? Because, of course, these foreigners are here legally. So what is the responsibility of the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, especially under social protection? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Majority are Kenyans, some are foreigners. It's not majority are foreigners. Some are foreigners, and we are taking a census. We're just waiting for budgetary allocation so that we can have a breakdown not only of which are foreigners or Kenyans, but also where they come from in Kenya, and also identify what is the main cause, what made them come to the street. Because we want to find out, is it a family breakdown, is it poverty, is it they being used as child labor, especially the children, to come to the street. So we're undertaking that census, and we'll be able to provide a copy to this House with more details. Because we're very concerned about also trafficking and child trafficking. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they are working with us also, the Ministry of Interior, to identify these foreigners that have come into our country, to find out how they came here, did they have documents, what are they doing in our streets, and how we can be able to send them back to their countries. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. My question is to Honorable CS, is that what happens, or what measures do they put in place, especially for, like the answers he has given here, in case a CS is moved to a different ministry? to make sure that the same things are implemented by the next years? Because I'm asking this because, like him, he has been moved from foreign affairs. There were questions about foreign affairs, especially I asked. They've not been done up to date. And also when he was in the tourism, there are things to do with tourism and wildlife conflicts and fencing of... let me finish. No, Mr. Speaker, please, let me finish because it will answer these questions here.
Senator Kavindu,
it will answer these questions here.
You're not supposed to answer to any question. You're supposed to ask.
Yes, I'm not answering.
Just have your seat. Take your seat. Senator Kavindu, take your seat. Now, the main question has been asked by Senator James Murango through Senator Joe Newton. Your supplementary question must flow from that particular question. Anything outside that main question will be deemed not to be a supplementary question and therefore disallowed. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is about the questions that Murango has asked, and the CS has answered very well. But I'm asking, just in case they are not done while he's still in that ministry, what measures do they put in place to make sure that the next CS follows up and does it, just like the questions we had asked from the former ministries where he was, and they've not been done to date? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you very much, my Senator Kavindu. A government is perpetual. As a government of Kenya, we are still implementing policies that were carried out in the 1970s during the reign of Jomo Kenyatta. Some of the issues that I've discussed here, some of the things and there are policies that I'm talking about today, I found them in the ministry. And we are continuing because the technical teams are there and the ministry continues regardless of who the minister is. The minister can add volume, can bring better policies, but the incoming minister should be able to carry forward. And it's a very good question. And it's a good question to ask the ministers who are in the dockets that maybe I was, where they have reached in those government policies. Because I'm carrying out the policies that I found in the ministry and adding new ones, and that's how the perpetuity of government is assured. Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mariam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I have a question of the first one, not this one, so I can continue.
No, you may not continue. Just take your seat. Senator Chiranke, not in. Senator Murgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking a question in regard to the attaches that they have sent to particularly Saudi Arabia. When we were there...
Senator Murgo, it's got nothing to do with the question by the Senator Morango. That relates to the first question, which is now closed. Senator Maruma is walked out. Senator Methu, not present. Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, mine is just a concern because the first part of the question, I am not satisfied with the answer given by the CS. And that's why I was trying to raise a point of order. So, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Osotsi, I think the CS undertook, just like he did in respect to the question by Senator Mazayo, to find out and come back to you.
Mr. Speaker, that has been a trend, even with the predecessor.
So let me assist you, Senator Osotsi. Honorable CS, within 7 days, we need to get a detailed response to the question by Senator Osotsi and the question by Senator Mazayo.
Very well, Mr. Speaker.
To be filed with the office of the clerk.
Very well, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sigei, Senator Wambua Enoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had the CS talk about a national rehabilitation program for street children, I would want him to clarify how many children are in this program and where is that facility that is doing the rehabilitation. The Speaker, if you allow me, the Speaker, apart from being the Senator of Kitui, I'm also the principal assistant to the minority leader. And he has received information, just as we are seated here, about the question that he had asked about Maureen, and if the CS could listen to this, the Speaker, that lady is said to be in very, very critical condition. It may not actually wait for 7 days, the Speaker. The Speaker, I would request that you direct that the ministry moves with speed, actually even today, to contact Maureen in Saudi and find out what help can be extended to that lady, because we are actually running a risk. We have just received information from the minority leader that the lady is doing extremely badly. I thank the Speaker.
Senate, Honorable CS, as you respond to the first limb of that question, take note of the concern about the lady who is critically ill in Saudi Arabia. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The National Rehabilitation Program is one whereby we work with different agencies and whereby we monitor as a government to ensure that they are being rehabilitated. As a government, we are about to set up a center here in Mavoko and others with funds coming in so that we can be able to take our street children to some of those centers. We have a few that are set up that come and go, and I'll be able to align the system. I'm trying to fix the system and ensure that we eliminate street families so that we rehabilitate our children, and especially identify why are they on the street. Are they on the street because they don't have a home, or are they on the street because it's better to be on the street financially and all that. Mr. Speaker, I take cognizance of the concern about our Kenyan who is ailing, Maureen, and I undertake that within 48 hours I'll provide this House with a letter detailing what we have found out and her status, and we'll ensure that she's assisted. The life of every Kenyan, the condition of every Kenyan, the livelihood, the health of any Kenyan, whether they're in Kenya or outside Kenya, and especially when they're outside Kenya, is critical. And it doesn't matter where they are or how they got there. It is our responsibility to help them. And I'm going to communicate with my colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to ensure that we move with speed to find what is happening and to be able to assist Maureen. I'll deal with both issues within 48 hours, Mr. Speaker, sir, with your indulgence. I submit.
Senator Miraj.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa ya pili. Ningependa kumuuliza waziri kama ako na takwimu za wale watoto wanaorandaranda ambao wameongezeka na wamekuwa watu wazima kiasi cha kwamba na wao wamezaa watoto wengine ambao sasa wamekuwa watoto wa kurandaranda pale mjini Mombasa. Bwana Spika, imefikia kiwango cha kwamba familia hizi zimeingia katika makaburi mashuhuri yanayojulikana kama Mbaraki Cemetery, na wameweka makazi pale. Ningependa waziri atueleze ni mikakati gani inaweza kutambua watoto wanaorandaranda, ama ni kuna kipimo gani cha kiserikali ambacho kinapima jamii ambazo zinarandaranda, nikiazimia hao watoto na familia zao. Na suala hili la hawa watoto limeleta sintofahamu kubwa hadi kuongezeka kwa masuala ya utovu wa usalama katika maeneo yetu ya Mombasa. Je, kuna hatua gani ambazo zinachukuliwa kuwajua hawa kweli ni watoto wa kurandaranda na ni sababu gani wanaishi katika mji wa Mombasa? Kwa sababu kuna vidole vya lawama vimekuwa vikinyoroshwa kwa gavana pindi anapojaribu kuleta usawa katika hawa watoto. Je, kuna hatua gani zinazochukuliwa kuwatambua kwanza wapi ni watoto wa kurandaranda halali, na ni kwa nini wameongezeka kwa 80% katika mji wa gatuzi wa Mombasa? Asante Bwana Spika.
Honorable CS.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Miraj. Hesabu ambayo tumesema tutaifanya ile census itaweza kutupa takwimu ya kutosha, tutaweza kufahamu ni wangapi ambao wanarandaranda katika maeneo yote ya Kenya, pia Mombasa. Ni ukweli ya kwamba wengine wamezaliwa hapo, wamezaa hapo, na hata wengine pengine watakuwa wana wajukuu hapo, wanaishi kwenye barabara, wanaishi sehemu tofauti. Kwa hivyo ni jambo ambalo linatatanisha sana, kwa sababu kuona watu wanaendelea kuongezeka. Ndio nimesema kwamba tumeona idadi imeanza kuongezeka tangu wakati wa COVID. Baada ya COVID kumekuwa na hii shida kwa sababu ya upungufu wa hela, na tunataka kuangalia ni kwa nini weko hapo, na kama wengine wameingia katika hali ya kutumia madawa ya kulevya, hali ya upungufu wa usalama, kuwa wahalifu, kwa utaweza kuchangia wakati kuweza kuokoa hawa watoto na vijana na kina mama wenye kwenye barabara. Ni jambo ambalo linaendelea kwa kila wakati. Hatusemi tunangojea mpaka wakati ule tutafanya ile hesabu. Ni mpango ambao unaendelea, nimeutilia mkazo. Nilikuwa na mkutano wiki hii tu kujadili mambo haya kwa sababu yananikera. Ni mambo ambayo sipendi kuona Wakenya wanahangaika kwenye barabara, na tuko nchi huru. Lazima tuwapange waweze kurudi nyumbani, tuwape hali yao ya maisha ambayo ina heshima. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Thank you so much, Honorable CS. That terminates our interaction with the CS. You may leave at your pleasure, Honorable CS. We will now move to the second CS to respond to question number 15 and number 25. Clerk, you may usher in the Honorable CS in charge of Treasury. Now, Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this morning of Dr. Godfrey Gitau Mwangi, the National Chairman of Former Councillors. He is in the Senate to follow proceedings and particularly response by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning on question number 015 by the Senator for Meru County, Senator Katuri Murungi, MP, in today's order paper on the delay in the implementation of the resolution of the Senate of 18th of October 2018 and the subsequent recommendations of the Interagency Task Force on the payment of honorarium and monthly pension to former councillors. Honorable Senators, the said Senate resolution arose out of a motion filed by the Senator for Kitui County, Senator Enoch Wambua CBS MP, on payment of a one-off honorarium and monthly pension for former councillors during the 12th Parliament, which was passed by the Senate on the 18th of October 2018. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Mwangi and wish him a productive visit. Thank you. Now, the Honorable CS is in the House. We will straight away go to question number 15. Honorable CS, welcome to the Senate. Question number 15 is by the Honorable Senator for Meru County, Honorable Katuri Murungi. You may proceed, Honorable Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to ask this question on behalf of the former councillors who cut across the Republic of Kenya. And so, Mr. Speaker, the question I'm asking is question number 15 to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning. And I want to thank my former colleague in the National Assembly for finding time to come to respond to the questions from the Kenyans. Number one, what are the reasons for the inordinate delay in the implementation of the resolution of the Senate of 18th October 2018 and the subsequent recommendations of the Interagency Task Force on payment of the honorarium and monthly pension for former councillors, despite the undertaking given by the National Treasury via letter dated 28 September 2021 and addressed to the Senate that it would factor the payments in the ensuing financial year 2022-2023. Number B, Honorable Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status update on the establishment of the requisite legal and policy instruments to authorize, process, and facilitate payments, and if not, state the reasons for such delay and whether the eligible former councillors have been enrolled in the Inua Jamii program. And number C, when will the former councillors receive their full gratuity payments, and could the Cabinet Secretary state the measures put in place to ensure that for those who are deceased, the rightful beneficiaries are identified? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable CS, you may now respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and Honorable Senators, I am grateful for the opportunity that to appear before the Senate, conscious of your critical role in our nation's governance, ensuring accountability and representing the interests of the Kenyan people. My aim today is to provide you with a comprehensive response to your questions to achieve the best possible outcomes for our country. I was invited here actually to address two questions, and the first question has been asked, so I will straight away go to address the question that the Senator for Meru County has asked. That is question number 015, asking me to explain the following: that what are the reasons for the inordinate delay in the implementation of the resolution of the Senate of 18th October 2018 and the subsequent recommendations of the Interagency Task Force on payment of the honorarium and monthly pension to former councillors, despite the undertaking granted by the National Treasury via letter dated 28 September 2021 and addressed to the Senate that it would factor the payments in the following year's financial budget of 2022-23. Number B was for me to provide the status update on the establishment of the requisite legal and policy instruments to authorize, process, and facilitate payments, and if not, state the reasons for such delay and whether the eligible former councillors have been enrolled in the Inua Jamii program. Number C, which is the last one, was when will the former councillors receive their full gratuity payments, and could my office state the measures put in place to ensure that for those who are deceased, the rightful beneficiaries are identified? So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to respond to the questions raised by the Senator for Meru County regarding the payment of honoraria and monthly pensions to former councillors as follows. Number one, regarding reasons for the delay in the implementation of the Senate resolution and task force recommendations. Mr. Speaker, the delay is in implementing the Senate resolution of 18th October 2018 and the recommendations of the Interagency Task Force on the payment of honoraria and pensions to former councillors has been primarily due to legal constraints. The Attorney General, who is the official government advisor on legal matters, in a legal opinion dated 8th May 2023, advised that there was no legal basis to support the proposed one-off honoraria payment of Kenya shillings 200,000 to former councillors who served for less than 20 years. The opinion also referenced circular number 13894, issued by the then Ministry of Local Government, which limited pension or gratuity payments to councillors who had served continuously for 20 years or more as of 13th December 1993. Furthermore, the legal advisory highlighted the absence of a structured formula to determine benefits, given that councillors were not salaried or were not being paid salaries, but received allowances that varied across different regions. Consequently, implementing the proposed payment of 2,383,800,000 to about 11,919 former councillors lacks the necessary legal and policy foundation. The second question was the status of legal and policy instruments to authorize and facilitate the payments. Mr. Speaker, given the legal constraints that I've just mentioned, the National Treasury has considered an alternative approach through the Inua Jamii program, which is designed as a social protection initiative for elderly citizens. Former councillors who meet the eligibility criteria form part of the persons for inclusion in the program. The State Department for Social Protection, in collaboration with the relevant government agencies, including the National Treasury, has been verifying eligible registrants into the program. We shall collaborate with the State Department for Social Protection to identify the number of former councillors already enrolled and facilitating the registration of those who have not yet been enrolled. In addition, the National Retirement Benefits Policy, which was approved by the Cabinet in October 2023, also aims to provide a harmonized framework for administering retirement benefits across all sectors. This policy will guide future considerations on the retirement welfare of various categories of public service workers, including former councillors, by ensuring a structured and legally sound approach to retirement benefits. To further strengthen the legal framework, the government established a multi-agency committee on 17 September 2024 to review and align public service pension schemes with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. This committee is expected to provide recommendations on how best to address pension coverage for different categories of public service workers in a sustainable and legally compliant manner. On timelines for full gratuity payments and measures for identifying beneficiaries of deceased councillors, Mr. Speaker, in light of the legal challenges, the National Treasury will engage the Office of the Auditor General to conduct a forensic audit of the 328 former councillors who were initially identified as eligible for benefits. This audit will verify those who are still alive and identify rightful beneficiaries for those who are deceased. The findings of this audit will guide the next course of action in ensuring that only eligible former councillors or their rightful beneficiaries are considered under existing government social protection mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to addressing the welfare of former councillors within the confines of the law and available resources. While the initial recommendations of the Senate and Task Force lacked legal backing, the alternative approach through Inua Jamii, coupled with the broader national retirement benefits policy, seeks to provide sustainable and legally sound interventions for retired public servants. I submit.
Yes, Senator Kathuri, you have any supplementary question?
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much indeed. Honorable Speaker, this is a matter of national interest. And if you can indulge us, maybe you can give us a bit of time to ventilate on this matter, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this matter was canvassed during the last Senate. And I'm happy that the member who raised that matter is in this House. There is for the Senate. Honorable Minority Leader. Honorable Minority Leader. No, I wanted to catch the ear of the Speaker because for sure this is a matter of national interest, Honorable Speaker. And we want to, maybe if you can give us some indulgence, especially when asking the supplementary questions, because our former colleagues, councillors, have really given an input to this republic. They actually laid the foundation where today we lay our legs on. So, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, maybe the senators who might be interested, you can give us some leeway to really ask the right questions because those councillors have no other forum except this House, especially the Senate, so that we can canvass this matter. And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Dr. Mwangi for availing his time also to appear here on behalf of almost 1,500 councillors as their chairman. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see the interest that this matter has. And therefore, first of all, I want to inform the CS that the payment of these councillors was an undertaking by Honorable Ambassador Ukula, who was the CS, National Treasury and Planning. And this matter came through this House, Mr. Speaker. What we are trying to unlock today is the resolution of the Senate on the 18th of October 2018. When this matter was canvassed here, the matter was raised by the one and only the Senator for Kitui, who is, by God's grace, he is present in this House.
Senator Kathuri, just proceed to ask your supplementary question. Because
So,
the dashboard is
Speaker,
full here, and the more you...
It is the first time we're hearing that there was another legal opinion which was sought with the AG, and the AG gave an opinion that there was no legal basis for payment of these honorarium or the pensions to these councillors, Mr. Speaker. That was last year, 2023. So from the time this matter was canvassed up to the 2023 legal issue that the AG raised, we don't know what happened and who is this trying to frustrate the councillors. Mr. Speaker, it is actually, if there is no legal basis, it is the AG who should work tirelessly to ensure that we have a legal framework to give them their pension or whatever they worked for. So, Mr. Speaker, the CS, you know, I don't want my former colleague to go into this route. That is the one who has not been able to pay the councillors. He has been unable
Senator
to
for Gathuri.
Okay.
Senator for Meru, Senator Kathuri. What is your question to the Honorable CS?
My question is, Mr. Speaker, is that I have fully stated my stand that it is the first time again this matter is arising. Even the chairman is not aware about the legal opinion by the AG. I don't know who sneaks these opinions so that these people don't get money. A very little money, less than even 200 million, Mr. Speaker, sir. This country is ashaming itself. These are former leaders who really need support. They don't have even money to pay for SHA. Because I met the former councillors from Meru. Very old ones, they have even no 300 shillings to pay for SHA. And then there is a group somewhere which is frustrating them not to pay them 200,000 per councillor, those who served for less than 3 terms. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is to reform back the Treasury. We don't need that legal opinion. It can be quashed again by this House, Mr. Speaker. So these Wazee can get their pension, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, that is why, you know, this matter is not about the questions, but
So,
needed to see.
Senator for Meru, with all that, what are you asking the Honorable
The CS to set aside that legal opinion and pay the councillors without further delay. That
So
is,
your question is, could the Honorable CS set aside this
set aside, yes, he set aside that
the
opinion.
legal opinion and proceed to pay? Is that your
And,
question?
and if he cannot be able to set aside, he can still request the AG through Treasury. He has that power.
Good.
To request the AG to set aside that opinion or to come up with a legal framework that will enhance the payment of the pension and honorarium to the former councillors, Mr. Speaker.
So, Honorable CS, there are 2 supplementary questions from Honorable Gathuri. One, are you in a position to set aside the legal opinion? Secondly, if not, can the AG come up with a legal framework within which the former councillors can be paid their money? Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Am I able to set aside the legal opinion of the Attorney General? The answer is no. I don't have that capacity. The Attorney General is actually the legal advisor to the government, and once she has given the opinion, or he has given the opinion, then that opinion, I cannot set it aside. The other issue before us is whether we need to have a legal framework to pay the councillors or former councillors. The answer is yes. I believe legal opinions are based on legal provisions. And so the Attorney General must have been informed by a clear foundation of the law. So the people with the mandate to bring a legislative framework through which councillors can be paid is actually this House. What my advice would be is for Senator Kathuri to make a provision in law that would allow these former councillors to be paid. It's not that I am not interested in supporting these councillors. Many of them come from my place. I know them personally, and I've even met them during my times in politics, and they have complained, and I know what they go through. But for us to be able to pay these former councillors gratuity or pension, there is need for legal framework. Remember, Mr. Speaker, we even have cases of former members of parliament whom I personally made an attempt to provide a legal framework through which they could be paid. And I brought a bill in parliament, which bill was passed, and the president refused to assent to it. But this was in realization that there was no legal framework to pay former MPs. There cannot be lack of legal framework to pay former MPs, which made us to attempt to amend the law, and yet there is a legal framework to pay former councillors. To be honest, if these former councillors have to be paid, there must be change of the law. We all know that even our constitution talks about any money that is paid to anybody who is appearing like a public officer, like I believe councillors would appear, needs to be processed through SRC. But lastly, I want to say that these councillors were not even drawing a salary. So you don't even know if you are to pay them. You are basing it on what? And the motion by the Senate was a motion. Motion remains an intent. It doesn't have the legal basis to occasion withdrawal of public funds. So the motion remains motion. If it was a bill passed by the House, then that becomes legally binding. But where we are, there is an intention to pay councillors, former councillors, but we lack the legal framework. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Enoch. What guidance are you seeking, Senator, for Kakamega?
Mr. Speaker, I have listened very painfully the difficulty the minister appears to be having. But listening to it and reading it together, listening to it and reading Article 94 of the Constitution, which speaks to the role of Parliament, it says, Mr. Speaker, in 94.5, that no person or body other than Parliament has the power to make a provision having the force of law in Kenya except under the authority conferred by this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, we have not come to Nairobi in this House to speak in vain. We do so under the provision of this Constitution, which I have read, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is the minister suggesting that the Attorney General has the power to veto Parliament? This Parliament made a resolution.
Senator Boni, I'll give you an opportunity to ask a question.
No, I was asking for interpretation.
Senator Enoch,
Mr. Speaker, I wanted you to guide us.
I can see your name on the dashboard. I'll give you an opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
What? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, clearly for my brother, my friend, my colleague, Waziri Bandi, the shoe is clearly on the other foot. That's very clear. The shoe is on the other foot. Mr. Speaker, just riding on what Senator Alwale is trying to ask, can Parliament, Mr. Speaker, can this Senate, your Senate that you preside over, Mr. Speaker, can it legislate in vain? Is it possible that senators will sit here, pass resolutions, and they just talk show, the AG seated in an office somewhere decides, no, this is not good enough? Mr. Speaker, the question is, so when the minister received that advisory opinion from the AG, when did he write to you, Mr. Speaker, to tell you that we have received, you made a resolution on this date, we have received an advisory opinion from the AG on this day, and so please act accordingly. Mr. Speaker, I will not belabor the point. The CS fought with me on this matter when he was pushing the agenda of former members of the National Assembly to be compensated. And in front of the Speaker, as I go to sit down, I have a message for the CS from one former member of Parliament from Kitui East, Honorable Mweu. He is still seated waiting for the day that this administration will live up to its word, that the things that had been done wrongly will be done right and people will get their rights under this administration. The Speaker, can your house legislate in vain?
So is that the question to me or to the Honorable CS?
The Speaker, it's just a clever way of getting you to be agitated because somebody is trying to say that you can sit on that chair, preside over a motion, a resolution, the Speaker, push ministries to sit down and come up with a solution to a problem, and then one person, just by a stroke of the pen, says all that we have done is in vain. The question is to the CS, can this house, can any house of Parliament legislate in vain?
Senator, to inform who, Honorable? Whom do you want to inform?
Actually, it's the House.
Proceed.
Mr. Honorable Speaker, the CS has not given the right answer because, number one, this was not a motion, Honorable CS. A task force was formed, which included the Ministry of National Treasury and Planning, the Ministry of Devolution and Asal, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. So, Mr. Speaker, an interagency task force on payment of honorarium and monthly pension to former councillors was formed so that also to go and negotiate with them. And they negotiated and they agreed on what should be paid. The interagency task force gave proposals, and the 3 CSs appended their signatures in this report that I will table to this House. Yeah? So the 3 CSs who appended signatures to the amount of money that was be paid to the councillors are 1, CS, National Treasury and Planning. Number 2, that was Ambassador Ukulatan. Number 2, Honorable Eugene Wamarwa, who was the CS then of Ministry of Devolution and Asal, and Honorable Simon Chelugui, who was the CS Minister of Labor and Social Protection. So it is a negotiated package and agreement which was to be provided. And they understand in the year 2022-2023, that is when their monies were to be put into the budget. So, Mr. Speaker, we are not talking of a motion, but a resolution which was communicated now to the clerk of the Senate, from National Treasury and Planning to the clerk of the Senate, and advising the Senate what the interagency task force agreed. And this is a property of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. So we are not talking of a motion passed by the House. It is a resolution from an interministerial task force. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to table this resolution to the Senate so that as we discuss, this matter is not going to be discussed, and then we say today we are finished with the CS, but we must review this decision, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me all these indulgences, Honorable Speaker.
Table. Senator from Mombasa. Honorable CS, just note down the questions. You respond them at one go.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Nakumbuka mwaka jana wakati kwa kamati ya fedha ya bunge hili, waziri wa zamani wa fedha na hazina alikuja mbele ya komiti wakati tunajadili budget policy statement, na akakomiti kwamba hizo pesa ambazo watakana kulipwa madiwani wa zamani zitawekwa katika bajeti ya mwaka 2023 24-25. Sasa je, ni sawa mawaziri waje katika bunge hili na kamati zake kutoa maelezo ama kutoa majibu ambayo hayalingani, kwa sababu Profesa Njuguna Ndung'u alikuwa ni waziri wa fedha na hazina kuu ya serikali hii ya Kenya Kwanza. Leo tuko na waziri Mbadi. Je, ni sawa mawaziri kuja na majibu tofauti katika bunge hili? Leo wanakuja wanasema hivi, kesho wanakuja wanasema vile. Asante.
Senator Boni.
Mr. Speaker, our brother Honorable Mbadi is a very experienced parliamentarian, and he knows that Parliament does not speak in vain. I leave that to his conscience. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, the former councillors of Nandi County, Uasin Gishu County, and Kakamega County came to see me formally, and they told me that the president had met them and made a commitment just before he won the election that he would ensure this promise by the Jubilee government would be implemented by the... No, that interministerial was during the Jubilee government. That he was aware of that task force, and that decision he would implement if elected. Since God has been very kind, President Ruto is now the president, and he committed himself to these councillors. Can the minister undertake, as the financial advisor to the president, to go and make the necessary consultations so that the promise of the president and the expectations of the former councillors converge? We pay our old people. After all, if we pay this 200 million, it's a form of financial stimulus. They will spend the money in public and the economy will be vibrant in their villages, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Olekina.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ningependa kufahamu kutoka kwa waziri wa fedha. Je, ni lini jambo ambalo walizungumzia na wakakubaliana kama waziri wa fedha, waziri wa kazi, labor, na pia there were 3 of them, walikuwa watatu, na waziri wa ugatuzi, wakakubaliana kweli kwamba wanakwenda kusubmit ama kupeana cabinet memo ili pesa ambayo ilikuwa bilioni 2,600,816 iweze kuwekwa katika bajeti ya mwaka wa 2023 na 24 ili iweze kuwalipa councillors wa zamani ambayo walikuwa 11,909 na pia milioni 218 iweze kulipa councillors ambayo walifanya kazi zaidi ya term 3. Ni lini, je, ni lini mambo ilibadilika ambaye katika seneti hii? Mheshimiwa, najaribu kuongea Kiswahili kabisa ndio councillors waweze kuelewa. Ni lini hiyo ilibadilika ambaye seneti hii inaweza pronounce itself, sijui inaitwaje kwa Kiswahili, kujieleza kupitia namna mbili. Ya kwanza ni wakuwa na ile mkataba motion, ya pili ni wakipitisha sheria. Seneti hii ilipitisha mkataba ikasema ya kwamba hawa former councillors ambayo walikuwa ni 11,400 waweze kulipwa pesa. Tukazungumza, tukapiga mikutano hapa. Waziri wa fedha ambaye ndiye alikuwa kabla ya rafiki yangu Mbadi kuja, alikuja katika kamati ya labor. Alipotoka hapa, inakumbuka vizuri sana, ilikuwa Aprili tarehe 23. Tarehe 23 akatueleza ya kwamba hao wenyewe wamekubaliana wanakwenda submit cabinet memo ili hii pesa iwekwe kwenye bajeti. Je, ningependa kujua hii pesa iliwekwa kwa bajeti alafu ikarudi kaondolewa kwa sababu hawa ni watu ambao wamezeeka, hawana faida? Na ukijaribu kuangalia ni kwamba hao ndio wamefanya tuje hapa. Hao ndio walitengeneza. Kama si hao ugatuzi ingeweza kuja. So Mheshimiwa Speaker, ningependa kujua katika kweli ni lini jambo hili lilibadilika. Ya pili, nikienda kumalizia.
Honorable
Mheshimiwa,
you're entitled to only one supplementary question.
Hiyo ni swali
our order paper. No, under our standing orders.
Mheshimiwa Speaker, hiyo ni swali moja, swali ndio ngumu. Naomba tu nikubalie kwa sababu kama ningekuwa naeleza na Kizungu ingekuwa imeflow vizuri.
Conclude.
Mheshimiwa Mbadi ametueleza ya kwamba alipata ujumbe kutoka kwenye Attorney General ya kwamba hii jambo halifai kufanywa. Sheria. Mimi nauliza, wakati ile Mheshimiwa Ndongo alikuja kwenye kamati ya kazi ya labor, hakuwa amezungumza na huyo Attorney General kumweleza kwamba mimi sasa nakwenda kule nishawishi, na badala kabla hawajapeleka hii mkataba wao katika cabinet, kwa sababu hao wenyewe walisema wakuwa watatu, 3 cabinet secretaries watapeleka joint memo, cabinet memo, ndio hiyo hela iweko kwenye kwa nini kwenye bajeti. Ni lini hii ilibadilika? Ama ni ile mchezo ya paka na panya ambaye inakimbia hivi, leo tunasema tunapatia hawa, lakini kwa sababu hawana ile siasa, political clout, wanatupwa nje. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ningependa kujua kwa sababu maisha ya hawa former councillors ni maisha ambaye lazima tuwapiganie, kwa sababu leo hii Mheshimiwa Mbadi akisema ati tunabadilisha tuweke kama inua jamii, hiyo itakuwa ni discrimination. Kweli unawezaje kusema na inua jamii ya councillor nampa 1,200 na pia naenda kuinua jamii ya baba ya Ledamo unampatia shilingi 2,000? Hiyo kweli inawezekana? Hiyo kweli, je, hiyo ni ungwana? Asante.
Now, honorable senators, allow the honorable CS to respond, because in his response, I believe he may even address some of the issues that are yet to be raised. Honorable CS, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to state categorically that it's not in my interest to deny former councillors what is rightfully theirs. What I'm emphasizing on is, yes, it is desirable to pay these former councillors. Many of them are suffering, having served this country and having been in public offices and respected personalities in their right in this country. But we must do it within the law. Now, I have been asked by Senator Wambua a few questions, I think about 2. One, whether the House can act in vain. My answer is no. The House should not act in vain. Did we write to the Speaker?
Senator Eddy and Senator Fogarisha, kindly.
Did my office write to the Speaker on this matter or the opinion of the Attorney General? Unfortunately, I don't think we did. We didn't write to inform the Speaker. So the question here that has been asked is, there was a task force that was set up and the resolution of the House. First of all, let me start with the task force. Is the report of the task force binding? My understanding is no, it is not. Why? Because the Constitution, which Senator Boni Aluale mentioned, provision number 94, or Article 94(5), says no person or body, including task forces, other than Parliament, has the power to make provision having the force of the law in Kenya, except under authority conferred by this Constitution or by legislation. I am yet to see the provision in our Constitution or any written law passed by this Parliament which has authorized a task force formed to approve payment to former councillors. If there is that provision, I would obey and pay. Make provision in our budget and pay, but there is none. So that task force remains a task force. its report should be implemented procedurally, which has not. So up to now, there is no, out of the task force, which should have, a legislation should have flown automatically from the task force report to now anchor it in law, and that has not been done. Now, on a question by Senator Faki, why I have not respected or obeyed what former CS is committed to do. Unfortunately, I want to report to the Senate that yes, my predecessor, Honorable Yatani, or even Honorable Ndungu, probably made a commitment, but they didn't pay. The person who is paying now is myself. I cannot pay unless backed by the law. Because when now it will raise issues, I am the one accountable. I'm the one responsible. I cannot hide behind people who made commitments or intentions and didn't pay. So the paymaster now is myself. If they paid, I would have come here to report that they paid. But they didn't pay. And they left it for me to pay, and I'm checking the legal framework, and I don't see it. A question was asked about the Attorney General's powers. My reading of Article 156 is this, that the Attorney General is a principal legal advisor to the government. Now, being the principal legal advisor, I take his advice or her advice very seriously. And the Attorney General gave advice on 8th of May 2023 on this, and that advice has not been vacated or changed. Senator Boni Alwale has asked me about, again, Parliament legislating in vain. I want to say again, Parliament cannot legislate in vain. The only thing that I said is, and we have been in this house with Senator Boni Alwale for a while, we know the power and the force that a motion has and a bill. An act of Parliament. A motion usually, and by the way, this has been the legislative practice, that if you want a bill to pass easily, you craft it in a motion. That motion is debated, and once you succeed with the motion, then you follow through by generating a bill to actualize your motion. How I wish that Senator Wambua, who raised this matter, brought it to the House through a motion, followed through by bringing a legislation to anchor whatever the House resolved into law to allow for payment. If that is done, I will definitely obey the legal framework. As to the President's commitment to pay the councillors, I want to again read Article 94 of the Constitution, that no person, and there is no exclusion here, no person or body, whether President or anybody else, other than Parliament, has the power to make provision having the force of law in Kenya, except under authority conferred by the Constitution or by legislation. I am yet to see where power has been given to the President to give authority for payment that is not anchored in law. So what I would advise is if the President initiate through the executive a legislative proposal which would now give me the legal basis upon which this payment can be made, I will obey. Senator Lekina, Senator for Narok County, since when did we start? In fact, it was in Kiswahili, but I'm trying to translate it into English, that an agreement by 3 CSs be changed. I am not changing the task force report. What I'm saying is that task force report has made recommendations. Those recommendations now should be anchored in law to allow me to make payment to former councillors. And when did this change? It has not changed. The task force recommendation still stands, but we have to now actualize it. Did Professor Njuguna Ndung'u speak to the Attorney General before coming before the Senate? I wish I knew. I have not consulted him to know whether he did, but I thought he must have consulted, because for the Attorney General to give opinion on 8th of May 2023, that opinion must have been sought from the National Treasury. And the CS then was Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. So I am very sure he must have, in one way, communicated with the Attorney General. On the Inua Jamii, I was not saying that we pay the former councillors this gratuity, pension or honorarium through Inua Jamii program. What I mentioned is that we are working with the line ministry to make sure that these former councillors, those who deserve to be enrolled under Inua Jamii program, are enrolled in the normal way to get support like any other qualified Kenyans, including those who have not served as councillors. Thank you.
Now, honorable senators, we need to make progress on this very weighty matter. And I know that if I'm to give an opportunity to any of you, there will be no bigger departure from what has already been said by the senators who've spoken before. Now, you will note that there is a willingness to pay from the executive, right from the president to the ministry. The biggest obstacle that has been observed from the response by the Honorable CS is lack of legal framework. And therefore, Honorable Senators, allow me to, pursuant to Standing Order number 1, refer this matter to the Committee of Labor, working together with the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the Attorney General, within 60 days to come up with a legal framework within which we can actualize the recommendations of the task force so that the councillors are paid their due. If that's find favor, we will rest it at that. So, Honorable CS, this matter has now been referred to the Labour Committee, which will work with you and the Office of the Attorney General to come up with a legal framework within which the former councillors can get their dues. We'll leave it at that. We will now move to the second question directed to, yes.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for your guidance, and I'm okay with your guidance. And I've realized the lacuna where it is. So, Mr. Speaker, I was asking, is it possible also to include the Committee on Budget and Finance? Because it is very critical on this matter. That is the committee that can also be able to get CS Mbandi anytime they want to meet him. Otherwise, Labour does not know the corners of Treasury more than the Committee on Budget and Finance. And also it is a finance matter, Honorable Speaker, so it is better also that committee to be involved.
Very well. In fact, 3 committees will work together with the CS Treasury and the Office of the Attorney General, the Labour Committee, JLAC, and Finance and Budget. And we need that report to be laid before the Senate within 60 days. The earlier, the better. We move to the second question. Question number 25. Senator Boni, proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 25 as in the order paper. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to congratulate the Minister for the candid manner in which he has handled this matter of gross national importance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could the Minister provide a list of programs in Kenya relating to education, food security, governance that were implemented by that were being implemented by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, at the time of freezing of foreign assistance from the United States of America? B, Mr. Speaker, what is the total funding requirement for each of the SAID programs, and could the Cabinet Secretary specify the amount of funds that USAID was projected to provide in the financial year 2024-25? C, what interim measures has the government put in place to address the funding gap that has emerged as a result of the freeze of foreign assistance from the US to ensure continuity of the critical services? And finally, D, could the Cabinet Secretary also outline the government's long-term plans to reduce reliance on foreign aid and to ensure sustainability in financing for the critical programs in sectors such as education, health, food security, and governance? I thank you.
Cabinet Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to reciprocate the magnanimity of Senator Boni Halwale by saying that I also appreciate the Senator for being proactive in this matter, not to wait until there are challenges out of this freeze of funding to now ask questions, being proactive and asking well in advance. Since the senators read the question, I don't want to read the question again, but it's question number 025. And this is my response, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker and honorable senators, first and foremost, allow me to acknowledge the invaluable support from the government of the United States of America to the people of Kenya for over 6 decades. We enjoy cordial and enduring partnership between the United States and Kenya that has led to healthy collaboration in a wide range of initiatives, such as access to education, improving quality health care through nutrition, family planning, and maternal and child health, including malaria, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and strengthening of the healthcare system. Support for economic growth through trade, agriculture, and infrastructure initiatives. Fostering democracy, governance, and conflict interventions that directly impact the lives of millions of Kenyans. So cognizant of the executive order titled Reevaluating and Realigning United States Foreign Aid, issued ordering a 90-day pause on all U.S. foreign development assistance programs to conduct a review, the National Treasury wishes the Senate to note the following: that the U.S. government provides foreign aid primarily in grants form to Kenya using several U.S. government agencies whom we have existing development cooperation framework with, including U.S. Department of State, U.S. Agency for International Development, or what is known as USAID, U.S. Trade Development Agency, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the United States President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, Development Finance Corporation, and the U.S. African Development Foundation. We signed the Development Cooperation Framework Agreements, DCFA, with USAID on the 8th of December 2019. The initial contribution was US dollars 50,016,204, but this has since been increased to US dollars 1,695,978,754, which is equivalent to 220 million, to Kenya shillings 220,477,238,020. So the DCFA is valid up to 30th of September 2028. Mr. Speaker, with those highlights, now I wish to respond to the question number 25 by the Senator for Kakamega County, Senator Boni Halwale, as follows. On the question of could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all programs in Kenya relating to education, food security, and governance that were being implemented by the United States Agency for International Development at the time of freezing of the foreign assistance to the United States of America. I wish to state, Honorable Speaker, that attached to my written response is the list of the United States Agency for International Development or USAID-funded programs in Kenya relating to education, food security, and governance, which are appended as Annex number 1. And under education, if you go to that annex, it's page 14, my submission. I hope all members have it, or the members who have this response from me have them. Under education, there is US dollars 22.3 million, and I've highlighted where this money would be spent: training of teachers to enhance reading instructions, providing support to Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Maybe I continue. Under education, I said that there is 22.3 million US dollars, and just giving examples of where this money would have been spent or would be spent is improving early grade literacy across public primary schools. I want to single out that there was support for to public TVETs in Kilifi, Mombasa, Nakuru, and Machakos to align training to industry needs, providing scholarships to youth to attend TVETs, and support for the newly established Open University of Kenya to build systems for instructional delivery and establish partnership with private sector and universities in the US and globally. So that is those are the areas where the education money was going to. Under governance, a number of issues being dealt with, but the amount that was available for this was 8.6 million USD. Under food security, it was a little higher, 128 million, and that is equivalent of 16.5 billion shillings. This was supporting a number of NGOs, supporting programs including Dadaab and Kakuma refugee camps, supporting improved farming practices, supporting county governments, NGOs, and UN agencies, and especially in ASAL areas, in providing foods and relief to over 2.5 million people. So, and the details are there, Mr. Speaker. The second question, what is the total funding requirement for each of the said programs, and could the Cabinet Secretary specify the amount of funds that you said was projected to provide in the year 2024-2025 financial year? Now, the amount for the said programs is approximately, the program that I highlighted, food, governance, and education. Those ones, the said programs is approximately 158.9 million US dollars, equivalent of about 20 billion Kenya shillings, while the total assistance, including health and the others, is approximately US dollars 405.4 million, which is about Kenya shillings 52 billion for the financial year 24-25. from USAID, which, as I've indicated, includes other sectors such as health, economic growth, water, and environment. Now, Honorable Speaker, it's important to note that while official government assistance, or what is known as ODA, from USAID is aligned to our medium-term plan and supplement government investments and largely benefits the people of Kenya. USAID contracts implementing partners, that is both international and local, are entities who bear the fiduciary responsibility, because this funding is implemented by implementing partners. The money, as I will state, does not come to our budget. Therefore, USAID support is not reflected in the budget. The National Treasury plays a subsidiary role in facilitating tax exemptions. So that is something worth noting, that this has been off-budget financing from USAID. However, provides very critical services. Now, what interim measures has the government put in place to address the funding gap that has emerged as a result of the freeze of foreign assistance from the USA to ensure continuity of critical services? My response is as follows. Regarding the interim measures to address the funding gaps resulting from the freeze of foreign assistance from the USA, the government has taken the following steps to ensure the continuity of critical services. With the affected state departments, we are conducting a review of our existing budget allocations to prioritize funding for essential services in sectors such as health, education, governance, and food security to be included in the budget estimates supplementary 3 if it becomes very necessary, because if this funding stops abruptly and there are critical areas, we cannot wait for the 2025-2026 budget. Likewise, county governments are also expected to act accordingly to ensure uninterrupted service delivery for devolved functions. We are also engaging with other development partners to explore opportunities for additional funding and technical assistance to plug the gap. For instance, the Universal Healthcare Agenda reforms under the Social Health Authority, SHA, vulnerable populations will gain access to a broad spectrum of benefits, including screening, dialysis, kidney transplants, essential medications, and vital medical equipment, and plug the gap by some of the interventions that were being performed by USAID. The other question was that could the Cabinet Secretary also outline the government's long-term plans to reduce reliance on foreign aid and to ensure sustainable financing for critical programs in sectors such as education, health, food security, and governance? And this is my response, Mr. Speaker. Like you have observed, this administrative action has actually exposed our vulnerabilities and calls for concerted efforts to address them to ensure Kenyan self-reliance. Our Vision 2030 overarching goal is to transform Kenya into a newly industrializing, middle-income country, providing a high quality of life to all Kenyans or citizens. The journey to self-reliance requires broad-based economic development. The government is implementing the journey to self-reliance requires broad-based economic development. And the government is implementing policies, programs, projects, and interventions in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda to enhance agricultural transformation, support macro, small, and medium enterprises, provide affordable housing and settlement, achieve universal health care, and support growth of digital superhighway and creative economy for job creation. Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget policy statement, which is titled Consolidating Gains and a Bottom-up Economic Transformation Agenda for Inclusive Green Growth, we have outlined the fiscal consolidation measures to reduce public debt vulnerabilities while providing fiscal space to deliver essential public goods and services. Fiscal consolidation will be supported by concerted expenditure rationalization and revenue mobilization efforts. This will bring public debt on downwards path, consistent with Kenya's debt anchor. To boost revenue, emphasis will be placed on a combination of tax administrative and tax policy reforms that include strengthening tax administration for enhanced compliance through expansion of the tax base, minimizing tax expenditures, leveraging on technology to revolutionize tax processes, sealing revenue loopholes, and enhancing the efficiency of tax system, and focusing on non-tax revenues that ministries, departments, and agencies can raise through the services they offer to the public. The government will also sustain efforts to strengthen accountability, transparency, and a revenue mobilization path guided by the medium-term revenue strategy that makes tax regime more efficient, equitable, and progressive. These deliberate efforts will be put in place to strike a right balance between the need to create a stronger and more reliable revenue stream and the need to protect the critical masses who have been grossly affected by the prevailing macroeconomic shocks. To strengthen expenditure control and improve efficiency and effectiveness in public spending, the government will rationalize and reduce non-essential expenditure, roll out an end-to-end e-procurement system to maximize value for money, and increase transparency in procurement. Operationalize the Public Investment Management Information System to automate public investment management process, revamp the Public Service Pension Administration through digitization and re-engineering of the pension management system, and expedite governance reforms targeting state corporations. To strengthen public finance management, the government will fast-track the process of transitioning from cash basis to accrual basis of accounting to improve cash management and enhance financial and fiscal reporting, and entrench the adopted zero-based budgeting approach while finalizing the financial year 2025-26 budget estimate to reorient our budgeting and expenditure framework. The government will also operationalize the asset and inventory management modules in our IFMIS for all MDAs, and this will enable the government to have full visibility of all assets and inventory and facilitate optimal assets utilization and ensure idle and unserviceable assets are disposed in conformity with existing legal requirements. I want to add that most of these measures that I've already put here, Mr. Speaker, many of them are at their advanced stages of implementation. For example, the case of e-procurement, we are onboarding almost all MDAs by the beginning of next month, and we are doing a test run all the way to June 30th, and by July 1st, all MDAs, including county government, should be all onboarded into e-procurement system to make efficient, effective our procurement system and realized economy in the procurement. The case of actual accounting, already my committee is implementing it, which is headed by my PS. I delegated that to him, and is doing an excellent job, even in terms of inventory and investment management. So all these measures that I've pointed out here are already at advanced stages of implementation. They are just not thoughts, not wish list. They are not intentions. We are actualizing them. Now, to crowd in private sector in the provision of public services, the government will scale up use of public-private partnerships, framework for commercially viable projects. I know PPP has actually been scandalized. We are trying to revamp it and re-engineer it and rebrand it so that Kenyans may appreciate the PPP as an alternative to financing major infrastructural development, which would reduce pressure on our fiscal space. The government is also piloting a new human resource management system, which will be rolled out to all national government ministries and departments, as well as all county governments, in order to improve the management of the wage bill, including statutory payroll deductions. In view of the constrained fiscal environment, prioritization during resource allocation will be critical in ensuring low priority expenditures are dropped or deferred to give way to high priority service delivery programs. Ministries, departments, and agencies are therefore required to reevaluate all the existing or planned activities, projects, and programs to be funded in financial year 25-26 and in the medium-term budget. Sector working groups are required to eliminate wasteful expenditures and pursue priorities which are aimed at safeguarding livelihoods, creating jobs, reviving businesses, and economic recovery. I want to add that we have already put a zero-based budgeting module into the IFMIS for this budget that we are just processing at the moment. So sector working groups should also ensure that all expenditure items in the financial year 25-26 budget are justified, and emphasis is placed on allocating the limited resources based on program efficiency and requirement than incremental budgeting. Before I finish, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to point out that the day before yesterday, I actually had a meeting with the Charge d'Affaires of the United States in Kenya, and this is what I want to add to the response that I've just given. We discussed at length, and it is clear, as I said, that US has been giving us support directly through implementing partners, not through the budgetary support. The programs after this, out of this executive order, which have been running in this country, were about 100. With this executive order, the programs may reduce only to 15. So these are the areas that are going to be saved from the discussion I had with them, and I requested him to give me a write-up on what the impact of this executive order is, including areas that are not going to be affected, and he stated that life-saving interventions will not be affected. Emergency like infectious diseases, e.g. Ebola, those ones will not be affected in terms of fund cuts. Emergency food assistance will also be preserved or not affected or saved. And finally, our mission in Haiti through our police force will also be supported still. So the executive order does not affect those areas. The life-saving interventions, emergency food assistance, and our mission in Haiti, those ones will still continue to enjoy the US funding. So, Mr. Speaker, even as we pursue these risk mitigating measures, we remain hopeful that we shall continue strengthening our bilateral ties with the US, notwithstanding of the outcome of the 90-day review on foreign aid. We discussed at length with the team from the US Embassy, and they have also indicated areas where they still want to continue cooperating with us, and they re-emphasized that the foreign policy around Kenya is still intact and remains intact. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Honorable Senators, due to time, I will not be taking any supplementary questions except from Boni Kalwale. You can ask one supplementary question if you're still not satisfied with the response.
Mike, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I am satisfied with the answer that has been given by the Minister, and I want to regret on behalf of the people of Kakamega, Mombasa, Nakuru, Kilifi, and Isiolo that 1.1 billion shillings, which was earmarked for promoting accountability in delivery of services in those counties and reducing fraud and wastage and abuse of resources in the health sector, has fallen on its face. Mr. Speaker, because of where we are, I want to draw the attention of the Minister to page 9 of his answer, bullet 8.3, where you have mentioned the issue of the Social Health Authority. Mr. Minister, since you're trying to look for ways of bridging the gap, the universal health, where it has succeeded elsewhere in the world, the funding model is clearly based on what comes from the National Treasury, plus what they realize from the contributions for members who subscribe into the program for insurance, and finally, an element of out-of-pocket. Could you clarify to the country, Minister, that the current funding model of SHA does not factor in any money from the national treasury. Given, Mr. Minister, that in your budget you have 134.5 billion shillings thereabout to the Ministry of Health, which remains at which is going to remain at Afi House, can I plead on behalf of the Kenyans that 134 billion shillings that is remaining at Afi House, you should take upwards of 50%, 80%, 60%, and take it into SHA so that it can be the national government's contribution to cushion the program, because the noise I'm hearing across the country, Minister, is about funding. People are happy about SHA, but the funding doesn't appear to be sustainable. Can you undertake to go and learn and borrow from the way it is done in other countries, the UK included, on how universal health care is funded? I'm afraid, Minister, the noise we're hearing is not about to come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Boni.
you,
Cabinet
Mr.
Secretary,
Speaker.
please respond.
Thank you.
Proceed, Cabinet Secretary. Senator Cherargei, I did. Yes, so I've told you we have run out of time. There's another Cabinet Secretary waiting. What questions? The question has been answered. This is a supplementary question. Senator Cherargei, we are not going to engage each other in a verbal exchange. Cabinet Secretary, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei, that is enough. We have run. Let the Cabinet Secretary reply, please. No. No. Allow the Cabinet Secretary to respond. Cabinet Secretary, please respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to quickly address the two issues that Senator Boni Alwale has raised. On his regrets, I agree that funding issues like advocacy and support on fight against corruption will be affected, certainly. And we may not have enough resources to support such programs, but it is regrettable because we really need accountability in the country. So I agree with Senator Alwale on that. Secondly, on the issue of universal health cover, again, I want to agree with Senator Boni Alwale that this program is contentious everywhere in the world. There's no country that I know of which has implemented universal health coverage without issues around it, either political, people who feel it should not be implemented, especially in developed democracies, or it is issues around how to implement it. But again, as a country, I think in manifestos of major political parties, we promised universal health coverage. But we must implement it properly. The issues around SHA is not that SHA is not right. It is the good thing, it's the right thing to do, but the issues around it is, are we doing it properly? So this is the question that we need to do. So what am I going to do from the Treasury perspective? From the Treasury, I'm going to insist on rationalization of our budget to put money where it is needed. I just want to tell Senator Luale that it is the Treasury has supported SHA. It's not true that we haven't supported. Even in the current supplementary 2, we have allocation of 6 billion to support SHA, 3 billion to support primary health care, and another 3 billion to support critical care, health care. By the way, it may interest members to understand also from the information I have is that the critical health care was not being provided under NHIF. But under SHA, the government has insisted we must provide it. And we must make resources available. We will, apart from the deductions from members, which is basically insurance, it is not actually expenditure. The money that is collected from Kenyans, if you take the best case scenario that no Kenyan falls sick, that money should not be spent, it should remain there. So it's not an expenditure. That is why when you look at our fiscal framework, we have removed the SHA allocation, the 73 billion, from the fiscal framework, because it is not an expenditure. But the government must also put in money to support healthcare in the country. So you will see in the budget our allocation to support this health program, because it is critical, we must do it. And I hope and I believe that the line ministry will do justice to Kenyans by making this system work, make it more efficient, and make it more accountable. The problems which are there were bound also to be there, because any new thing must have challenges. But those challenges must be dealt with within a period of time so that the system works. We cannot afford to lose this. We cannot afford to lose this system. This system is the best for this country, especially with these challenges around some of the health programs that were being supported by USAID. We need a system that caters for the vulnerable of the society. And so mine was, Mr. Speaker, just largely to agree with Honorable Alwala. And I've taken note of your suggestion and advice to my ministry on how to deal with the funding to the health ministry. I will act accordingly.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. We shall give you leave now. Wish you all the best in the hard task ahead. And probably we'll see you next time you're in this house to ask you more questions. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Yes, Senator Cherargei. Give Senator Cherargei the mic.
Mr. Speaker, looking at the number of questions that is there, it is good to advise some of us, because we have been sitting since morning, whether now that the Minister of Interior is coming and he has a lot of more than 10 questions, it is good to guide us early that if there will be no space for supplementary question, it's good to advise the House, so that some of us don't have to wait. If we will not get a chance, then why did we put at the standing order that supplementary questions will be provided? In fact, the standing order should only allow the people who are asking the questions to ask the question. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's unfair. Members come here at 9:30, we sit through, we try to ask further supplementary questions, or even to assist in the guidance of the House, Mr. Speaker. We are not being given the chance. I'm not saying not only me, but a number of colleagues who have sat here since morning, Mr. Speaker. So looking at the next minister, he has almost more than 10 questions, and looking at the, even if, Speaker, even if you are to indulge the House to rise at 1:15, it will not be sufficient. So is it understanding order number 1 that you guide, or the questionnaires or people who are requesting supplementary questions, the owners of the questions in words, can drop their supplementary questions and ask and allow other members to ask further questions, if that will be okay? But if it is not possible, Mr. Speaker, understanding order number 1, kindly guide the House so that members do not expect to ask. We can be good listeners and we can listen through, Mr. Speaker. Because mine was just simple. I just wanted to find out from the CS Mbadi what is the position of USAID on the payment of universal health coverage, for example. Because it's a live issue. I know you have UHC in Garissa, I have UHC, they are in Kericho. Mine was just to seek clarification. Is the cabinet minister in charge of Treasury looking with the suspension of USAID? Is there a way that they have been catering for UH? And finally, Mr. Speaker,
is also we need your ruling and interpretation. Mr. Speaker, understanding on the number one, when a cabinet minister comes with the questions, even from your dashboard, you can tell whether there is a sufficient answer to the question. Is there, in your wisdom, understanding on the number one on the ruling, to provide to the House, if from the face value the minister has not answered the question adequately, is there, from your position, looking at the reaction of members, to direct that the minister withdraws that response and maybe comes back from 14 to 7 days, Mr. Speaker, so that we also don't waste time. The reason we're asking more questions is because maybe the response from the minister is not sufficient enough. So, Mr. Speaker, I need your guidance on standing order number one, on where the cabinet ministers are giving answers that do not satisfy the House, or we feel that the cabinet minister, Mr. Speaker, has not taken the House seriously, Mr. Speaker. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to request, with your indulgence, if we're having Minister of Interior, we're having Minister of Treasury, we're having Minister of Labor, is there a possible way that going into the future, when we have ministers that have many questions, is there a way we can have them give us two, for example, Minister of Treasury and Education, because we want to agree there are many issues. Is there a way Senate Business Committee can sit and agree, Mr. Speaker? I thank you for that indulgence.
Thank you very much, Senator Cherargei. What you're raising is very valid. And I think we will be taking it up with the SBC so that we cannot be cramping up ministries which are very big, with very big dockets and a lot of questions to the ministry. So I think today we had 3 cabinet secretaries, and it was quite evident that we were not able to manage our time properly. Now, as far as the questions to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior National Administration, we seem to have 6 questions. Maybe I would like to propose that we get all the 6 questions asked. We see how much time we have after that, so that we can know how many supplementary questions we can take thereafter. So we will ask the 6 questions without any supplementaries. And then after the 6 questions have been replied, we will see how many supplementary questions we can take. Is that in order, Honorable Senators? Very well, thank you. Question number 21 by Beatrice Ogola. Sorry, Cabinet Secretary, I did not welcome you into the House. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Beatrice, please give mic to Senator Beatrice. If you could please ask the question as it appears on the order paper so that we can save time.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question is, 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide details on the level of preparedness in mitigation of drought and floods, given the devastation that was experienced in the country during the heavy rains in 2024 and in the previous years too? Are there specific areas that have been particularly mapped out for such mitigation? And what strategies have been put in place for such zones? And lastly, how much has been set aside in the year 2024-25 budget earmarking disaster and emergency response? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary? And also, with your indulgence, please, if we could request that you summarize the reply as much as possible, the response, because the answers have already been circulated to the members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me opportunity to be here. I thought I heard earlier from your directive that we all the questions be asked once, then I run through all of them once. I heard in your directive that all the questions be asked once, then I can run through all of them once. If it can,
oh, very well.
Very
well. Then
continue.
we can do that. Yeah. The next question, number 27, by Senator of Turkana, James Lomanen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I ask question 027. Could the Cabinet Secretary outline the measures in place to mitigate the persistent livestock theft and banditry that has plagued Turkana County for decades? B, what different strategies has the ministry put in place to alleviate the unchecked rates that have exacerbated poverty and insecurity in the region, despite numerous government intervention? C, could the ministry consider the adoption and implementation of modern technological solutions such as animal identification and traceability system, ANITRAC, to enhance livestock traceability and effectively curb cattle rustling? D, could the Cabinet Secretary provide mechanisms that can be implemented to enhance collaboration between Turkana County security agencies and neighboring counties to enforce livestock identification policies and ensure seamless livestock tracking and recovery? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chute of Marsabit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I have 3 questions. Question number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary state the number of internally displaced persons in Marsabit town and provide details regarding the timeline and circumstances of their displacement, as well as the form and extent of support provided to them? Question number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary disclose plans and timelines for settling the IDPs and outline measures put in place to ensure their safety and well-being during and after resettlement? Question number 3, what are the terms of compensation of the IDPs, and could the Cabinet Secretary indicate when the compensation will be paid? Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hamida Kibwana. Yes, Kajwang, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, not to challenge your directions, but when you look at the time, we've got just about 30 minutes before we close this session. And when you look at the order paper, there are quite a number of questions. We run the risk of asking the questions, and then time runs out, and then we end up taking the written responses from the CS, which will defeat the essence of this session. You know, when we put this in the order, in the standing orders, Mr. Speaker, this session was never there. It was meant to build interaction with the cabinet secretaries. I want to plead with you, Mr. Speaker, that let's not rush so that we finish. Let us have a substantive conversation and probably just take the first 3 of the first 4 questions, let the CS respond, and if he's able to respond satisfactorily within the time allowed, then the other questions could be asked. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we'll be engaged in an academic exercise, which is not the spirit of this session.
Thank you, Senator, but we were proceeding very well before you interrupted. So what we will do is we'll continue, and you know the Speaker has a leeway to increase the time once it gets to 1 o'clock. So we'll see how well the Cabinet Secretary is doing in terms of his response, okay? Senator Hamida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have 3 questions, Bwana Waziri. 1, Bwana Waziri, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the deteriorating condition of Nyayo House in Nairobi Central Business District, which houses the State Department for Immigration and Citizen services, and indicate whether there are immediate plans to renovate it to ensure efficiency delivery of service to Kenyans. Number 2, what measures have the government put in place to ensure that both the public and government officials working at Nyayo House have access to adequate facilities, including clean water, sanitary amenities, and a conducive working environment? The last one, Bwana Waziri, could the Cabinet Secretary also confirm whether there's budgetary allocation for the renovation of Nyayo House in the 2024-2025 financial year, and if so, state the amount? Thank you.
Next question by Senator Joe Nyutu on behalf of Senator Kirinyaga County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in for Senator Murango of Kirinyaga County, and I have the following questions to the CS. One, could the CS state the immediate actions taken to address the increase in incidents of insecurity in Kirinyaga County, particularly in Kerugoya town, where 2 people have been killed by criminals in the last 1 month, and in Gruvani town, where marauding gangs have been waylaying residents early in the morning and late in the evening? And number 2, Mr. Speaker, what is the status of investigations into an attempted robbery with violence incident in Meringaire area in Kerugoya town on the night of 24th January 2025, in which Mr. Murimi was shot and later succumbed to injuries while undergoing treatment at Kerugoya County Referral Hospital? And could the Cabinet Secretary clarify the timelines within which police officers should investigate incidents of crime such as this? Number C, Mr. Speaker, what long-term plans does the ministry have to curb insecurity in Kerugoya town and its environs? And finally, could the Cabinet Secretary also state the number of police officers who have served in one station within Kirinyaga County for more than 3 years, and state when those officers were transferred? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. And the last question by Senator of Tana River, Senator Danson Mugatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 20. Why have the killers of Mr. Isaac Jarso, a resident of Kone village in Tana River County, who was killed by suspected KWS officers on the 29th December 2024, not yet arrested? B, when will the killers be arrested, given that a similar incident happened in Nakuru County on the 18th January 2005, and within hours, arrests of the suspected KWS officers was made? C, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, DCI officers, are yet to make arrests when the suspects are known KWS officers? And finally, when will the family of the late Mr. Jarso be compensated following his unfortunate death? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, you may respond.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I will run through the questions in the order that was presented to us. First, Mr. Speaker, is the question 003 by Senator Marsabit. I'll jump a number of things there to save time, which are necessary, introductions which are necessary, and straight to the point that, Mr. Speaker, on part 1, which is the number of IDPs, between 2017 and 2022, sporadic ethnic, social, political skirmishes resulted in the displacement of people in various parts of Marsabit County. On record, we have 528 households whose houses were vandalized and 135 houses burned as follows. The list is provided, Mr. Speaker, with villages provided for the sublocation. And maybe just to mention the sublocation, in Jirime sublocation we have 12, households, in Milima Tatu, 18, in Mataharba, 33, in Kilta, 35, all totaling in different villages as provided for, and I'm sure the advanced copy was shared. It's a total of 528 households, Mr. Speaker, and the band houses are 135, and Mr. Speaker, the list is provided. Honorable Speaker, on question 2, the government has been distributing relief food to the affected households. In addition, there has been allocation of bursaries to the affected children. On the terms of compensating the IDPs and when they will be paid, most of the IDPs, Mr. Speaker, have returned to their original manyatas. Manyata Daba, Sales, Wako, Konso, Banjale, Isakon Umuro, and Gabra scheme. To ensure their safety and security, police posts have been established in the area. SACU CDF has put up a police post at Manyata Daba awaiting deployment of security officers. National Police Reservists have been deployed across the hotspots, and Mr. Speaker, peace dialogue has and dialogues have been conducted across the county, and peace structure committees are operational. There is enhanced intelligence gathering, and there is frequent public barazas being conducted in the area. Honorable Speaker, in the absence of budgetary allocation in my ministry to facilitate compensation for IDPs, the county resettlement committee is engaging the IDPs to voluntarily return to their manyatas. This has become possible since the security situation has stabilized. The government commits to ensuring that upon return of the displaced persons, adequate provisions is made to provide them with food and non-food items. Mr. Speaker, on question number 006 by nominated Senator Honorable Ameida Kibwana, Mr. Speaker, on part 1, which is the deteriorating situation of the Nyayo House, I would like to respond as follows. Nyayo House was commissioned around 42 years ago and currently accommodates over 58 national and county government departments, which offer different services to the citizens, especially immigration services. Previously, the ministry engaged the State Department of Public Works to assess the necessary maintenance works of Nyayo House, and they gave the ministry a bill of quantities amounting to 244 million shillings, 831 and 831,860 shillings, funds which the ministry does not have at the moment. The refurbishment will cover internal and external painting, electrical and mechanical works, including the lifts, Mr. Speaker, which are actually performing very poorly. The State Department of Immigration and Citizen Services occupies the majority of the floors in Nyayo House. All these floors currently occupied by the State Department are being refurbished to ensure efficient service delivery and a conducive working environment for both the staff and the clients. The floors that accommodate the Principal Secretary's office and on 23rd floor, and the Director of E-Citizen Services on 23rd, 22nd and 17th floors have all been renovated and refurbished with more modern furnishing and IT infrastructure. The service lobby on the ground floor, where the Directorate of Immigration and Citizen Services carries out passport application and issuance, was fully renovated and expanded to accommodate our targeted clientele. Plans are underway to renovate offices on 3rd, 4th, and 8th floors and refurbish all the washrooms and all floors that are occupied by State Department of Immigration and Citizen Services. On part 2, on the measures put in place to ensure both public and government officials working there have clean water, sanitary amenities, and conducive working environment, I'd like to respond as follows, Mr. Speaker. The government has ensured an uninterrupted clean water supply, which runs throughout the week from the Nairobi City's county. Nyayo House also has reserve tanks on the rooftop of the building in case we experience water supply shortages. The State Department of Immigration and Citizen Services has also outsourced cleaning services. On whether there is a budgetary allocation for the renovation in 2024-2025, Mr. Speaker, I wish to state that the State Department for Immigration and Citizen Services was allocated 70 million shillings in the financial year 2024-2025 budget for the renovation and refurbishment of our offices at the Nyayo House. However, due to the ongoing austerity measures, the National Treasury reallocated the funds. We do hope that the National Treasury will disperse the funds to allow the completion of the budgeted renovations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On question 012 by Senator James Murango of Kirinyaga County, Mr. Speaker, we have a very detailed response, but I'll try to summarize. Mr. Speaker, regarding the immediate actions that have been taken by the National Police Service to address increasing incidents of insecurity in Kirinyaga County, particularly in Kerugoya town, I'd like to respond as follows. In January 2025, several security incidents were reported in Kerugoya and Gurubani towns within Kirinyaga County. Consequently, the following immediate measures were undertaken to arrest the situation. 1, increased patrols and rapid responses. The National Police Service intensified both foot and mobile patrols in Kerugoya town and its environs, focusing on early morning and late evening hours when incidents were more frequent. 2, special operations. The National Police Service organized continuous special operation to get rid of the criminals. 3, public sensitization. Regular public security meetings were conducted to inform the residents about emerging crime trends and preventive measures. 4, stakeholder partnership. Collaboration was strengthened with community policing groups, Nyumba Kumi initiatives, and private security firms to facilitate information sharing for effective security management. 5, multi-agency coordination. Law enforcement worked closely with the national government administration, officers, other security agencies, and public to build confidence in security efforts. 6, targeted investigations. Specialized units were deployed to conduct thorough investigations leading to the arrest and prosecution of criminals. On the status of investigation to an attempted robbery with violence incident in Miringi-Lira area in Kerugoya town, and the death of one Mr. Murimi who was shot in the incident, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to respond as follows. On 24th of January 2025 at around 9:30 p.m., Gladys Nyambura Njuki, an M-Pesa shop operator in Kerugoya town, closed her business and boarded a motorcycle registration number provided ridden by Eric Minor to her residence in Mudhaika area. Before reaching her destination, they were intercepted by assailants using 2 numberless motorcycles, each carrying a pillion passenger and armed with a pistol. The criminals confronted the complainant, brandishing pistols, and forcibly snatched her handbag while demanding money. Upon hearing a distress call, a resident, Mr. Peter Karimi Kamau, aged 44 years, responded in an attempt to assist. Unfortunately, one of the robbers shot him. They also fired 2 shots into the air to disperse bystanders before fleeing the scene on their motorcycles. Police officers arrived promptly, but criminals had already escaped. At the scene, the police officers recovered 2 spent cartridges and 5 rounds of ammunition. The injured victim was rushed to Kerugoya County Referral Hospital for treatment. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, he succumbed to these injuries the following day, on 25th January 2025. A post-mortem was done and confirmed that he had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the abdomen. Investigation commenced under the offense of robbery with violence, contrary to Section 2962 of the Penal Code, and the reference is provided. Forensic done at the DCI headquarters by conducting ballistic examination on 2 spent cartridges recovered at the scene of crime, established that the firearm used in this incident had also been linked to the separate robbery with violence case in DCI Ruiru. Mr. Speaker, as now the suspect remains at large and the case is still under active investigation to apprehend those who are responsible. Regarding the long-term plans by the National Police Service to curb insecurity in Kerugoya town and its environs, Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to implementing long-term measures to enhance security and maintain law and order in Kerugoya town and its surrounding areas. The following strategies aim to provide sustainable solutions to crime and insecurity: strengthening the community policing and Nyumba Kumi initiative, increasing, and the more details are provided for in the statement, increasing police presence and patrols, use of technology of crime prevention, especially CCTV cameras, and use of the toll-free emergency number, Fichua kwa DCI, capacity building and training of officers. We provide continuous training for the officers on modern crime-fighting techniques, intelligence gathering, and human rights practices, among others. Number 5, addressing socioeconomic drivers of crime. We would like to collaborate with the local community organization to provide social programs aimed at reducing criminal behavior, improve the legal and judicial processes to enhance collaboration between the police and judiciary to ensure that these cases are handled swiftly, enhance intelligence and surveillance operations in the area, strengthening public-private partnership in security, working together with the private firms and the community, and finally periodic security audits and stakeholder engagement to ensure that we deal with these threats. On the list of police officers who have served in Kirinyaga County over 3 years and their transfer status, Honorable Speaker, the Service Standing Orders, SSO Cap 72, govern the transfer and deployment of police officers. As stipulated, the mandate for deployment lies with the Inspector General and is not used as a disciplinary measure or reward. Mr. Speaker, additionally, in line with the Maraga Task Force recommendations, officers should not serve in a single station for more than 3 years to enhance their professionalism, mitigate corruption, and ensure optimal service delivery. However, exceptional circumstances allow certain officers to remain in one station beyond this period, including those with medical conditions requiring family support, officers are undergoing disciplinary proceedings, and those nearing retirement who wish to serve closer home. In this regard, we have a total of 30 police officers who have served for more than 3 years in Kerugoya town. Mr. Speaker, on question number 020 by Senator of Tana River County, Honorable Danson Mukatana, on matter of Mr. Isaac Jarso, Mr. Speaker, I wish to respond as follows. On part 1 of the question, Mr. Speaker, which is the why the killers have not been arrested, I'd like to respond as follows. On 29th of December 2024, at approximately 10:30 hours, a contingent of 23 Kenya Wildlife Service Ranger embarked on an operation to remove cattle and herders who had allegedly settled inside Savo East National Park. During the operation, the Rangers encountered Isaac Abdullah Jarso, now deceased, his family and his friends at his Manyata. When the Rangers attempted to arrest the deceased, an altercation ensued, escalating into a physical confrontation, pitting him and his friends against the Rangers. The scuffles resulted in the fatal shoot of Isaac Abdullah Jarso. At 10:45 hours, Mr. Said Omar, Assistant Chief of Kone Sublocation, reported the incident at Garsen Police Station under OBIN number provided. Officers from Kone Police Post responded promptly and arrived at the scene, where they found the lifeless body of Isaac Abdullah Jarso, a 42-year-old male. The body had gunshot wounds on the upper right thigh. Investigations commenced under inquiry number 4 of 2024 of DCI Delta, with officers documenting evidence at the scene and recovering 4 spent cartridges. The body was moved to Malindi Sub-County Hospital mortuary for preservation, where a postmortem examination conducted, confirming that the cause of death was due to gunshot-inflicted injuries. As part of the investigation, statements were recorded from the key witnesses, including the deceased wife, 2 friends who were with him at the time of the incident, and 2 brothers who arrived after being alerted about the shooting. Additionally, statements were taken from KWS Rangers involved in the operation. To facilitate forensic analysis, all 23 rifles used by the Rangers during the operation were collected and escorted to the forensic laboratory in Nairobi for ballistic examination. The ballistic expert report is yet to be finalized. Once the investigations are concluded, the action will be taken against the KWS officers found culpable in the fatal shooting. Mr. Speaker, regarding when the killers will be arrested, given that similar incident happened in Nakuru, Mr. Speaker, as I said, investigations commenced immediately, and the inquiry was forwarded to the DPP via the number provided dated January 2025. In response, the ODPP, through a letter reference this as provided dated 14 February 2025, directed that several additional matters be established through further investigation, including firearm ballistic report. As stated earlier, appropriate action will be taken against the officers found culpable. On number 3, only why the DCI officers yet to make arrests. Again, Mr. Speaker, the matter is still under active investigation by the DCI, and once concluded, appropriate action will be taken against anyone found culpable of the offense. Every effort is being made to expedite and conclude the investigation to ensure justice is served. Mr. Speaker, regarding when the family of Mr. Jaso will be compensated, Mr. Speaker, compensation for the family for the late Isaac Abdullah Jaso will be subjected to due process depending on the outcome of the investigations. Mr. Speaker, on question number 5 by Honorable Beatrice Ogola, I wish to respond as follows. On part 1, on the level of preparedness on the mitigation of drought and floods, Mr. Speaker, the prolonged 2024 rains resulted in flooding that impacted most parts of the country. A total of 315 people died due to the floods. 58,641 households representing 293,205 individuals were displaced, and 412,262 persons were affected. The flooding caused havoc to roads, bridges, aerodromes, railway lines, school infrastructure, and health facilities. 298,673 acres of agriculture land and 9,367 livestock were washed away. The government and partners supported the affected population with the evacuations and provision of shelter. Cut-off roads and railway lines were reopened. Further, the government distributed 3,798.1 metric tons of relief and other non-food items to affected population. Arising out of this experience, the government has strengthened early warning systems and disaster preparedness for anticipated flood risks. The government will issue timely alerts besides mobilizing emergency response efforts and awareness creation. The government is investing in climate resilient infrastructure, flood control measures, and disaster mitigation strategies to reduce vulnerability. This includes improving drainage systems in towns and cities. Number 2, on the specific areas that are particularly been mapped out, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say as follows. 3 months weather forecast issued by Kenya Meteorological Department on March, April, and May indicates near to above normal rains for the western part of the country, below normal for the rest of the country. There is therefore likelihood of floods in only 3 counties, Kisumu, Busia, and Tana River. The government has employed the flooding strategies, among others, to mitigate against possible floods. Following strategies, among others, to mitigate against the possible floods. 1, promoting reforestation and soil conservation. 2, rehabilitation of roads. 3, acquisition of food and non-food items in preparedness for that season. 4, mobilizing emergency response efforts. 5, awareness creation among the stakeholders and members of the public. 6, improving drainage systems in towns. 7, developing and regularly updating emergency response to ensure swift and effective actions in event of flooding, including protocols of evacuation in event of flooding. Number 8, fostering collaboration among stakeholders to develop coordinated response to flooding incidents. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on that question, on how much has been set aside for 2024-2025, I'd like to say in the current financial year, the minister has set aside 40 million for disaster and emergency response. This notwithstanding, the government will mobilize more resources should there be need to do so. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on question number 6, I hope it's finally, yes. On the, by Senator of Turkana, Senator James Lomenen, I'd like to respond as follows. On part 1, regarding the measures in place to mitigate persistent livestock theft and banditry that have plagued Turkana County for decades, Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to addressing the historical challenges of livestock theft and banditry in Turkana County and other regions by implementing several measures. The measures include enhanced security deployment. Mr. Speaker, there is an increased presence now of through specialized units such as anti-stock theft, rapid deployment unit, and general service unit to deter criminal activities. B, strengthening border security, increased patrol along porous border with neighbor countries to prevent cross-border raids and smuggling of stolen livestock. C, strengthening the inter-county and cross-border collaborations, particularly with neighboring counties and countries to prevent movement of stolen livestock and spread conflict across borders. D, recruitment of training and equipping of national police reservists drawn from local communities to complement police efforts in intelligence gathering and security patrols. 5, strict legal action and prosecution of perpetrators. We're working closely with the Office of DPP and the judiciary to ensure swift prosecution of arrested bandits. And 6, disarmament of, or F, disarmament of weapon recovery. There are ongoing efforts to recover illegal firearms through voluntary surrender program and targeted security operations. Mr. Speaker, on part 2, on the different strategies put in place to elevate the unchecked rates that have exacerbated poverty and insecurity in the region, where, Mr. Speaker, I would like to respond as follows. The government has implemented multifaceted approach to address the persistent rates in the region by continuously assessing and adopting strategies to effectively tackle insecurity and restore sustainable peace and development in the region. They include community policing and intelligence gathering, Mr. Speaker, 2, interagency collaboration with KDF, Ngao, police working together. 3, marking and digitization of livestock identification. In some parts, we have already introduced the livestock branding, microchipping, and digital database to facilitate tracing and recovery of stolen animals. 4, engagement of peace committees and elders, strengthening peace dialogues with community elders, religious leaders, and local administrators to promote conflict resolution, discourage retaliatory attacks, and foster long-term reconciliation among warring communities. 5, continuous training and capacity building of the National Police Service and the NPRs, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that they can respond effectively. And 6, purchase and distribution of new equipment for use by the security personnel, such as drones, mine-resistant and ambush-protected vehicles. Mr. Speaker, on part 3, on whether the government can consider adoption of implementation of modern technology, I'd like to respond as follows, Mr. Speaker. The National Police Service established a committee to oversee the implementation of GIS-based livestock tracking system in collaboration with the consultancy firm, Jibu Cyber Solutions, which was engaged to develop necessary software and infrastructure for livestock registration, movement tracking, and ownership verification. The system has been proposed for rollout in 3 counties in the Rift Valley and 4 counties in the eastern region. The process has reached the advanced stage with public participation plan to allow Jibu Cyber Solutions to conduct a proof of concept. This will test the feasibility, impact, and adaptability of GIS-based cattle tracking technology, which will be integrated with real-time monitoring. Once fully implemented, the solution will be linked to the existing police service infrastructure at the Integrated Control and Command Center, IC3, to enhance security and response to livestock theft incidents. On part 4, Mr. Speaker, regarding mechanisms that can be implemented to enhance collaboration between Turkana County security agencies and neighboring counties to enforce livestock identification policies and ensure seamless livestock tracking and recovery, I'd like to respond as follows. The government acknowledges the importance of livestock marking for identification and monitoring in the banditry-prone areas, as well as the need for inter-county collaboration in enforcing livestock identification policies and ensuring efficient tracking and recovery of stolen livestock. Our ministry, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Department, formed a joint committee to oversee the implementation of a GIS-based livestock tracking system. Additionally, to strengthen coordination, various mechanisms have been recommended to enhance cooperation, streamline livestock identification, and improve recovery efforts. They include the strengthening inter-county coordination of livestock management, 2, adoption of livestock identification system, 3, strengthening livestock market regulations, 4, cross-border security and regional cooperation, 5, legal and policy reforms, which includes the punishment and review of the punishment meted on cattle rustlers, among others, and finally, public awareness and sensitization programs. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. Honorable Senators, we are going to extend for not more than 15 minutes as per the provisions in the standing order. And I shall take, I think it will give us two questions from each side. So whoever is going to catch my eye, on this side. No, we don't have time for that. Okay, Senator Chute, you have the first question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm really shocked to hear the answer from the Cabinet Secretary telling this Honorable House that the IDPs in Marsabit were resettled, compensated, and bursaries given to those IDPs. I think the Cabinet Secretary is misled by being told that these people have been resettled. I want the Cabinet Secretary to provide evidence that shows that those IDPs were compensated or resettled or bursaries given. Any evidence that shows that the bursaries were given and by who? Because as far as I know, there were no bursaries given to IDPs. There were no settlement at all. So if there is any evidence, the Cabinet Secretary cannot just tell this
Senator
House.
Chute, you do realize we don't have much time.
Yes.
We've understood your question. Please, let's allow other senators.
Honorable Speaker.
Let us allow other senators to ask a
30
question.
Seconds, 30 seconds to conclude.
No, Senator, you've taken long enough.
But this is a
We've
very
understood the question.
Honorable Speaker, this is a very serious matter.
We've understood the question. You've made the question very clear. So
let me
it will be
conclude.
answered by the Cabinet Secretary. Just give other senators an opportunity. Senator Beatrice Ogola, under 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To the Cabinet Secretary, do we have disaster preparedness measures put in place that are gender sensitive? Because disasters affect genders differently.
Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, the minister told us that 23 guns on the incident of Tana River in Kone were taken to the for ballistic examination, and the report hasn't come out. What I wanted him to tell us is, what is the capacity at the examinations place, ballistic examinations place? What is the problem? Since January, now we are heading towards March. In fact, very soon we'll be 4 months down the road. Mr. Speaker, what is happening in the ballistic examinations place? Can he do something? Because this issue has caused a lot of tension in Tana River.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lomenen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would like to ask the CS, when will he lift the ban, curfew, in between West Pokot and Turkana? Because the former CS for Interior did the same. He said that the curfew has been removed, but up to now the traders are really suffering, and there is no highway robbery in that road.
Thank you. Let us allow the Cabinet Secretary to reply to those 4 questions, and then we'll take some more supplementaries.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. On Senator Chute's response, I was clear that we don't have money for compensation. However, the support that is working together with the CDF of the constituency, among others, some of the affected have been favored in terms of bursaries, including bursaries from the county government. I also want to say that since we don't have money for resettling people, as the statement indicates, the encouragement was to make the conditions better for people to go back to their manyatas in terms of security operations, and then give them a chance to go back. And as a result of the same, a good number of them have gone back. A few are yet to go back. Mr. Speaker, on the evidence of the same, it can be provided to the Honourable Senator in writing for the same. On the question of Honourable Beatrice Ogola, we have been and we will continue being gender sensitive in terms of disaster response. If you see what the government did last year, a lot of focus was on issues that are going to affect women, the needs, specific needs of women, specific needs for children, and this will continue. And we will continue perfecting, our responses. based on the experience we get from every year. And I believe that the gender-based sensitive measures are continually going to be revised to ensure that we are effectively responding to disasters. On Senator Mungatana's question of DCI, indeed, we have a financial challenge and capacity challenge at the DCI, and we are working to address that issue because there is a backlog. If you heard from my report earlier, the situation in Kirinyaga and the one in Tana River, both are still waiting for the report of the ballistic report to come out. But in my last visit, when I went to DCI office, they made certain requests that we are trying to factor in the incoming budget. And I believe that we should be able to make it to expedite the process, because these are 23 guns, so you have to really match each one of them until you find this is the one which was owned by or used by this particular officer. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the question of Senator Lomenen, we will assess the security situation. We continuously receive intelligence reports about the situation in Turkana, between Turkana and West Pokot, including recent activities around mining areas in Aro and the border. And we still have a dicey situation in some cases, but we lifted the ban as soon as we are ready to do so, and we can work together with local leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Senator Joe Newtu, under 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am just following up on the question by Senator Murango, question number 1, about the actions that were taken by the ministry following the killing of 2 people. The CS has responded, and they said that they introduced patrols and special operations and many others. Mr. Speaker, then my question is, we were taught I think in lower primary school that prevention is better than cure. So what is the ministry doing to see to it that we have preventive measures other than responsive measures? Because, Mr. Speaker, 1 life lost is 1 too many. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Catherine Muma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is a follow-up on Senator Beatrice Ogola's question. CS, the time to prepare for disaster or management of the floods in Nyando is now. Properly speaking, the machines for doing the dikes should be happening now. Why do we wait every year, and it is very predictable, for the floods to happen in Nyando, and then we purport to bring in dikes, including our senator purporting to create dikes with his own money, and then the same story of evacuating people? Why can't we build the dikes now, in the next 2 weeks, so that when the rains come, the water is diverted and you don't have to evacuate people?
Senator Sige, under 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his response to Senator Hamida's question, the Honorable CS made reference to a reallocation of the funds that had been requested to renovate Nyayo House. I do not know whether the Honorable CS is aware that the basement to that particular building, which is actually an exit and entry to the lifts, is in a sorry state. There is leaking water or sewerage that is a serious health hazard. And secondly and lastly, whether the CS in his comment about the Maraga Task Force recommendation has plans to implement that particular report, and if so, when will that be implemented in the police force?
Those are 2 questions, Senator. So, Senator Mandago, final question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mine is not a question, but I'd like to ask the CS that it looks like there are too many incidences associated with KWS officers. We had an incident in Nakuru. We had an incident in Tana River. Probably your ministry should put a little bit of focus on the officers. And finally, Honorable Speaker, I request the CS probably if we could visit Marsabit just to assess the situation. And
very well, Senator.
The other Manyatas after this comes so that they can go back.
You're only supposed to ask 1 question, so the CS will only answer 1 question. Senator Kavindu, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is to ask Honorable CS about insecurity. This is insecurity that Senator Murango is asking about is not only in Murang'a, but also in Machakos. We have a lot of insecurity, especially in a place called Matungulu, Machakos County, and other small areas. What are you doing about it? And also transfers of the police, which have been in our station for more than 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, you can respond. You only have 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I will be as brief as possible, Mr. Speaker. On the question of preventive measures in Kirinyaga, we have listed them in the statement on some of the preventive measures we apply, including preparation, early preparations, working with local community, strengthening Nyumba Kumi, intelligence gathering, training of the officers. So all of them are listed in the statement already, Mr. Speaker. On the question of Senator Muma, I agree with her that this is the time to do so. And this is not just a role that is played by national government. County government also has a responsibility. And to be fair, the county government last year did some good job working together with the national government. The only challenge we continue facing as a country is budgetary constraints. But to agree with you, because now Kisumu is one of the areas that is forecasted to have higher than normal rains, it is important for us to do what we need to do now. And I think we will do everything humanly possible within the budget that we have to do so. On Senator Sigei's on Nyayo, Nyayo actually is, to be honest, Nyayo needs urgent attention, particularly when it comes to the lifts. Anybody who, I have an office there, so I get stuck in the lift many times. So I have a personal experience, including using the basement you've talked about, leaking and so forth. But then when you have a budget situation on austerity measures, you are struggling between providing social services, health, and others, and renovations, and that's why we are facing the situation we are facing. But we will continue working to see what we'll do with Nyayo House, but I agree with Senator Sigei. And also that in the Maraga report, Mr. Speaker, we are implementing Maraga report in total, including already improved salaries to police officers of a lower cadre. These issues about transfer is being worked out, among many other things. And I think I'll have an opportunity in future to come and expound further because this is a very important report for us, as was the first task force that the President established when he came to office. On the question of Senator Mandago, indeed I'm going to Marsabit soon, and I'll inform the Senator of Marsabit so that we can have a personal view. There are many things that have been happening in Marsabit. We've done massive operation in Marsabit to deal with the issues of OLA and also drugs and many other things. So we will have an opportunity to visit with him so that we can see what's happening. On the KWS issue, indeed, it was of great concern for us what happened in Tana River and Nakuru. And I think we have been in conversation with the DG KWS. We will enhance this conversation between Kenya National Police Service and KWS to see whether there is a problem somewhere that needs to be dealt with among the officers that serve in KWS to ensure that we avert such situations in the future. And finally, I agree with Senator Kavindu, Agnes, that it is true that Machakos, we have had challenges in Matungulu, but those challenges, Mr. Speaker, were also related to criminal gangs, which are owned by politicians in the Matungulu area. And Mr. Speaker, like we have tried to do so across the country, we have been feeling the resurgence of political gangs or criminals posing as political gangs and pretending to be working with politicians across the country, in Western, in Rift Valley, in Mombasa, in Machakos, Matungulu area, among others. And Mr. Speaker, we are dealing with it. We will, I promise that we will dismantle these gangs, including in Matungu in Kakamega County. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary, and it was nice to have you, and looking forward to have you again. Honorable Senators, it is now 1:15 p.m. and having concluded the business for which I extended the hours of sitting pursuant to Standing Order 34.2a, The Senate stands adjourned until today, later today, 5th March 2025 at 2:30 p.m.
Tunaanza safari. Thank you.